Ms. Duggar, Mr. Myers.
Where is our mayor?
We are at-
She just got on, yeah.
Ah, there she is.
Are we ready for an efficient and quick meeting, right?
Yes, ready.
You hear Mr.
I'm liking how we've
Jones?
been rocking these meetings. I've been loving it.
Well, when you have one every week for 2.5 months, I mean, you don't have to have long agendas, right?
Hey, and I didn't even
say
get last Tuesday off. I had to do the historic district commission meeting, so.
Mr. Jones Chance, you look very youthful. I like
Oh.
the clean shave.
Wow. Wow.
I thought we had a teenager on council.
When did that happen?
I look like I'm 12 years old. Nobody will trust me with anything now.
Yeah, check his ID.
I thought we were having a beard competition here, Brian.
Oh, I already won, so.
No. I don't win by forfeiture? No, darn. Yeah.
Well, Chris Jacobs and our city clerk, I'm loving the stashes. Like they've been rocking those out all year long.
That's a look I cannot pull off.
No,
Are the chiefs on? Both chiefs, good evening, both chiefs, if you're here. Chief Hobbs, Chief DeJuicy, good evening to you.
Yeah, good evening.
All right, we have all
Good evening.
council
How you guys doing
present.
today?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Mayor.
Oh,
How's everybody?
Doing
Well,
well.
thank
good.
Good. Okay. I think I heard the clerk say we have everyone here, so would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Present. And I'm
Mayor-
in Ypsilanti in the county of Washtenaw.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Present in Ypsilanti in the county of Washtenaw.
Councilmember Somerville,
Present, Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
Mayor Richardson,
Present, City of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County, at home.
Councilmember Morgan,
President, City of Ypsilanti, Washington County.
Councilmember Simmons,
Present, City of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
Mr. Jones Chance.
President, City of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
With all present, there is a quorum.
Great, thank you.
Council, next item on the agenda is agenda approval.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as it stands. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I only heard 3 ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, clerk.
Council, next item on the agenda is public comment. One individual in the attendees list has their hand up. I'll allow them to speak now. You'll have 3 minutes to address council. And the first attendee with their hand up was Larry.
Hi guys, me again. Calling tonight, speaking tonight to remind council, the North Alley issues will not go away without city involvement. By now, there should be no confusion that this is a serious neighborhood issue. For those around in 2019, council members received signatures from 40 tenants and owners asking that council address the problems. Today, a tenant got stuck in the alley snow because our snowplow service cannot navigate that corner. The obstructions behind two failed businesses are causing current problems for those that live and work in the area. If you recall, the owners of Smarty Cats and Jackson Cleaners building are seeking to enforce the legal boundary on the east side of the alley while still obstructing the alley on the west side. I'm hopeful this brief synopsis will explain why it is the city that needs to resolve the alley blockage. Although there are secondary issues to be addressed, we're asking city councils to direct staff to take the necessary steps to restore public property to city usage. Thank you. I was hoping a couple other neighbors would call in, but apparently they weren't able to. It's been kind of a trying day for many people today.
Thank you.
Okay, council, next individual with their hand raised is Gail Wolkoff. I'll allow them to speak now.
Hi, this is Gail Wolkoff. I am wearing my Ypsilanti Police Commission advisory hat that's totally backwards, but from YPAC. Last week I heard you, or 2 weeks ago, I heard everybody talking about the role of council people on commissions. And I'm not clear what has been written or what is there, but as a commissioner, having a person sitting in a meeting, whether it's virtually or not virtually, and not talking and or showing their face is uneasy, because we are in a community and we like to talk about the fact that all voices are at the table. So as a commissioner, I encourage the liaison person to carry on a conversation. I'm fully confident that people have, know that line between dominating a conversation and just being a person talking on a commission. Mr. Morgan, I'm going to pick on you because you happen to be our liaison person, but you have shown up and your face has been there and you have had conversations with us, and you add to the conversations and you don't take away from the conversations. When you don't show up and you're not saying anything, in my opinion, you're taking away from the conversation because it's like being listened to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolkoff.
Council, next individual with their hand raised is Bob Kay. I'll allow them to speak now. Bob, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, there, okay, got it now. Okay. Bob Kowinski, 706 Dwight Street, also on the Non-Motorized Advisory Committee. And speaking in favor of the resolution authorizing city staff to partner with the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study to implement short-term traffic calming projects in our city. Traffic calming is very much a safety issue for pedestrians, the disabled, and bicyclists. As the greater the speed of a motor vehicle, the more likely it's going to be that there will be serious injuries or fatalities if a motorist collides with a person. To slow speeding traffic, some people say, well, we need more law enforcement, but you can't put a police officer, station them on every street at all hours of every day. But with traffic calming road features, they can be on duty 24 hours a day. Last year in Chelsea, Watts did a short-term traffic calming project with very innovative procedures. And I thought, wow, it'd be great to have that in Ypsi. And looks like we're going to be heading that way. So again, just speaking in favor of the resolution authorizing city staff to partner with Watts to implement the traffic calming projects.
Thank you.
Council, there are no other individuals on the attendees list with their hand raised. We can give another moment if you'd like.
Okay, I'd just like to thank all those that spoke. I think I missed saying thank you to Larry, but thank you for coming and speaking with us this evening.
Seeing no other hands raised, I will say if you are calling from a phone, if you'd like to raise your hand, you would have to press *9. If not, if it's okay with council, we can move on with the agenda.
I think we can move on.
Okay, next item on the agenda is ordinance first reading. The first ordinance up is ordinance 1373, an ordinance to add parks to the street name ordinance by amending Ypsilanti City Code, Chapter 94, Article 6, Section 94, Section 161 et sequitur. It is resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that whereas there is presently no city ordinance regarding the names or naming of parks, and whereas city council determines it in the best interest of the city to have a standard stated procedure for the naming of parks, and whereas there presently exists a city ordinance 94-161 for naming streets, and whereas that ordinance is suitable to amend to include naming of parks. Now therefore, the ordinance entitled an ordinance to add parks to the street name ordinance is adopted on first reading.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there a presentation on this ordinance?
Yes, Your Honor. This is John Barr, City Attorney. I'm at the corner of Huron and Pearl in downtown Ypsilanti. At one of the last meetings, Mr. Brian Jones Chance asked a question about how to name parks and rename them and so on. That triggered me to look at the city ordinances. I found there was no standard. And so I prepared this for the consideration of City Council.
Thank you. Mr. Jones Chance, do you want to say anything about this proposed ordinance?
I just have a couple of questions just on the procedure. So I guess this question is sort of answered by the factors of consideration, but I was curious about what would not constitute good cause.
If someone was doing it for some personal benefit, if they were going to make money over it, it would be not a good cause.
Okay. And then just as far as the procedure is concerned, the petition, so it looks to me like as though council could institute a petition by resolution and ask that the city clerk refer it to Parks and Rec, or 10 city electors or 50% of the property owners around the park. Is that right? Or does city council have to also, or the question is, do citizens always have to be involved? Are citizens always involved, or can council send the petition?
Well, the answer is yes. Citizens should be involved, but city council on city council's initiative can start the process.
Okay. Thanks. Those are all my questions.
We have a public hearing, right?
We're done with public hearing.
We have a
there-
public hearing for this
No, we
item, I
will.
thought.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
I asked that because I wanted to know if there was any presentation before we went into public hearing. Yeah, so, okay. Okay, the public hearing is now open.
Okay, Brian Foley in the attendees list has his hand raised. I'll allow them to speak now.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of standing back away from the phone a little bit. I'm still at work. Good evening, Mayor, representative, city staff, and Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all that stuff. I haven't been in city council in a long time, but I came in after reading the proposed amendment to naming parks. And that caught my eye because I'm like, where does this come from to change the names of parks? As a City of Ypsilanti resident, our motto says pride, diversity, and heritage. As a sustainability commissioner, our statement says sustainability, achieving a balance of ecological, social, that's the word I'm focusing on, and economic considerations to provide for an equitable path for the growth and improvement of our community in the uses of our resources, remaining conscious of the historical context while ensuring that the availability and vitality of those resources for future generations. Remaining conscious of the historical context and also our history here. We have a great history here. So when I see that somebody wants to change the name of our parks, I'm like, what brought this up and why? Our city is much bigger than just 5 people, 15 people making the decisions that want to rename our community. When I start hearing people talking about they want to rename places in our community, I'm often reminded that that is the first step of gentrification. You take a look in the city of Ann Arbor, the first thing they did before they took over the far west side, the old west side neighborhoods and Carytown was to begin to rename that community. We have to stop these things in the bud, because that's the first thing start happening is that we start renaming stuff. I don't even understand how somebody would come up with an idea that they want to rename the parks. They're not named after individuals. They're not named after derogatory historical persons or anything like that. They represent the community. And I think that we need to right now get some things fixed and repaired in our city before our city starts taking on changing the names of things. And one other thing I heard it mentioned by Attorney Barr is that community involvement. So I don't even know how it got this far before even having town halls and asking residents who actually reside around these parks, their opinion. Do you think it's a good idea to change the names of parks, streets, or whatever, landmarks, and for what reason? So I'm very hesitant when we start talking about renaming things around here, because that is always the first step to gentrifying the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley.
Council, there is no other hands raised on the attendees list. If you'd like to close the public hearing.
Okay. Would you read that resolution, please?
It is resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the public hearing for an ordinance entitled an ordinance to add parks to the street name ordinance be officially closed.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and supported. Is this a roll call or can we voice vote?
You can do a voice vote on this.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, I heard 5.
Aye.
Okay, aye. All right, the ayes have it. Okay, council, do you have any discussion on this item?
I suppose I better go.
Okay.
So the reason I brought this up is 1, we don't have a mechanism for doing it, and 2, I was hoping that the community would be supportive of naming a park after someone who has spent a lot of time, or a particular park in this instance, and the naming of an individual park would, it appears, have to go through the community. There'd have to be petition and all of that thing, and then there'd be meetings, and it would be an open process with community input. But this park in particular that I was thinking of a couple of weeks ago, I thought it would be nice to find out from the community if renaming Park Ridge Park after Mr. John Brown would be something that they would want to do. I think it's important to honor people who spend so much time and energy and effort and, frankly, his own money, looking after something even when the city couldn't afford to or didn't. And I also think it's important that we honor people while they're still alive. So I hope that having a process helps us to be able to honor people who would otherwise not be.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, I want to say,
Yes, I see your hand, Councilmember Morgan.
please forgive my lighting. I know like I'm in a scary movie. It's just how it's set up. It's my phone. I'm trying to get a good lighting here. I'm glad now we do have a process to honor people, who have done some work, whoever it is, in the city, and we have a process. What gives me second thought sometimes about it is who is eligible to highlight someone that they feel is worthy of honor, and what that looks like in what region of the city. Again, I think about community buy-in, and what heritage and what legacy looks like to certain groups. And so I think about legacy, about how things change. And again, not about one individual person, but everybody has a certain feeling about these people in question. So like again, if enough people who follow the same protocol got together, 50% of the people who lived in the neighborhood and followed the ordinance, and it was complicated or caused some type of like maybe something as simple as the Sisters of the Civil War. Maybe they wanted to adopt something, and then how certain people feel about those exchanges of history. So I know it sounds like a good thing when it's in good cause, but I just want to know if we're leaving it so open that again, maybe like a General Custer or whoever else would like to honor somebody in the same way, if we would allow that in the city. So those are just some things I would just throw in there.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think that I am in full agreement of giving people their flowers while they can smell them, and really lifting folks who have done and contributed to the community. I think I have some questions around how it's best for us to do that. I think that in particular, when thinking about the parks and really processing this idea, the parks are community spaces, and I think kind of going along with what Councilmember Morgan said, how do we know like how frequently a request would come in to change the name of a park? How frequently can that even happen? I didn't really, was not able to take that away from the information in the packet about how often that could change, right? Somebody 30 days after a new name was given could come and write another petition to us to change the same park's name again, based on what I'm reading. And I could be completely wrong, so I'll not go further on that. But I do think there are other means to show reverence to those who we think did a lot of work. I mean, I think of the example of the late Councilmember Pete Murdoch. A tree was planted in his honor in a park that he gave a lot of his time and energy to, but the park has not been since requested to be renamed after him. And that could be something that folks want to do as well. But I just wonder if we can't think of other ways. Placards, naming, someone talked about in the previous meeting, naming a playscape maybe after someone rather than changing the name of the park completely to be named after someone. I think that could open a can of worms that could create some dissension in the community first, but also just, I don't know if it's the cleanest way in my opinion. I think there are other ways that we could potentially do this and still, give our thanks and gratitude to those who have done a lot of work in those parks or in the community.
Councilmember Somerville.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add, and I think I brought this up in a previous meeting where this got brought up, but I just think like a more appropriate thing to do is to get some sort of plaque or another way to recognize somebody at the place where they're putting in, some like hard volunteer work and just other, community support. Park Ridge in particular, I mean, there are so many members of the community that put so much of their time and energy into Park Ridge. I think it becomes difficult to try to pick one person to commemorate in that way. And I did talk with folks from Park Ridge over the weekend, just in thinking about this, and just also knowing like some of the history in other areas of the city where we've, decided to honor folks who were part of park upgrades in other ways with plaques or, tributes, things like that. I just think like creating a process for something like this is going to cause a lot of, I think unnecessary confusion for people, and will alter, the history. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Any other council person? Councilmember Simmons.
So I think that it's bad to have a process to do this. I mean, somehow parks got named in the past, and to kind of clarify and, solidify that for parks that are unnamed currently or something new that might develop is not a bad thing. So maybe, what needs to be fleshed out is more about the how. So maybe it's not so much the what, but the how, that, hey, the desire isn't to rename parks, but we're going to do this, that, or how to do memorial things. I don't know, but, I'm not necessarily opposed to, like I said, having something kind of codified or, a process that's clear, because right now it's kind of unclear. And I think that was one of the things, was to clarify, how do we do this? But I don't know. That's just kind of my thought.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I think I agree with what Jennifer is saying about process, but I think that what I would add is that maybe for me, I don't know if this is the process that I would want to pass to go back to figure that out. I would prefer for us to say, hey, we want to figure out how we want to memorialize people and have a process for that specifically, not necessarily for how to rename parks, because I think that those two things for me are separate. And I'd rather talk about how do we, again, pay homage to those people rather than make it about parks in particular.
Okay. Councilmember Wilcoxen, I see you thinking.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't realize this was going to be so controversial.
I didn't either.
It's a simple thing, and it gives voice to the people in the community. If they want it to change, they will change it. If they don't want it to change, they will show up and say they don't want it changed. We have changed names of parks, and at the last meeting, nobody understood how that happened. Edith Hespley Park on Elm and Grant was renamed, but nobody knows how that happened. And there was no process for that in moving forward. So, it's happened in the past. I can appreciate people's concerns about memorializing people and Mr. Foley's comment that most of them aren't named after people. They're named for other things. I don't know why Candy Cane Park is named Candy Cane Park, but there are historic things that happen in that park that could be memorialized as well. But having a process for this is not inherently a bad thing, and figuring out how best to do that is a reasonable thing. Does it seem like it's a priority for a lot of people in the city? Probably not, but I don't see that having a process is either good or bad. It's just a process for something. So.
All right, Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, this, and maybe I shouldn't have framed it this way, but this is just about having a process for doing this. And just so that we are clear, I hear Ms. Brown's and Mr. Morgan's concerns and Mr. Foley's concerns, but the process, would require input from the people, who live around the park. And then it looks like a unanimous vote of council is required after it goes through Parks and Recreation. So there are some hurdles And that's even after public hearing. With physical mail notices going out to the people who live in the adjoining properties around the park. So I guess I'm not clear about what is wrong with the process from that perspective. However, I will say, hearing Mr. Foley, I do take the point about gentrification, and we do have to keep in mind that it is also a cultural process. And I do understand that, but this is someone from the community. And not to conflate the two subjects again, but it seems kind of like that's where the minds are. So I do want to stress that point, and we would still need the community to decide that that's what they wanted, and then we would all have to unanimously agree to do that. And at least that's my understanding.
Mr. Morgan.
I appreciate the clarification, Mr. Jones-Chance. I have no, for anybody, I have no problem with us having a process. I do think in conjunction with that, we do need a process, in my opinion, of who is notable enough to be considered to be named after. I think in that case, so again, I think those are two separate things. I think having a process of naming a park or renaming the park, I'm glad we have one. But then again, like a Wikipedia page, being notable or whatever it takes, I think it's certain criteria. I believe if we can create one for people who need it, because it will take our final vote, like you say, and community input. So that's all. I do believe the ordinance reflects that process is necessary and needed, and I support that. But again, who and how is a different thing.
Mr. Wilcoxon.
So I attended my first meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission as a liaison, and this came up there. And I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more discussion of it there. It was brought up. People went, it'll be interesting to see what council does with this. And I was like, well, that, I thought that was interesting, but I just wanted to let you know that this had come up there, and there really wasn't that much comment either way. So that's all.
All right. Mr. Jones-Chance.
One quick question. I am curious, maybe if anyone knows the history of, I know some of the history of Jesse Rutherford, but how was that process for naming the pool? Because I guess that is the only park that we have that's named after a person.
And it's only the pool, it's not the park.
Right.
That's named after him. Mr. Bauer, could you help us with that piece of history?
Well, I'm sorry, Your Honor, this was before my time, but I believe that the pool received a federal grant. And when council considered that, someone suggested that the pool be named after Jesse Rutherford because he was such a huge person in the community. And obviously they did that. But other than that, I just don't have it. I can look into it if you want, but I don't have any other information. But I don't think there was any process at that time.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Simmons.
Yeah, actually, it talks about the naming of it on their website. If you go to forpool.org, Jesse Rutherford proposed the pool in the early 70s. And so it sounds like the pool was, his idea, and then they got the funding. But there's a whole little write-up there. And anyway, I think it gives, it wasn't originally named after him, but it was later renamed after his death in 1976 because of his service to the city and his efforts and drive to get the pool constructed. He was also the first African-American to serve on the state of Michigan's Recreation and Parks Association. So anyway, so that's a few tidbits, but it's under the history section on their website.
He was also the first Black Parks and Recreation director here in the city of Ypsilanti. So Anyone else? All right, seeing no hands. I'm going to vote yes on this process because that's what it is. And I think there are two separate things that we're talking about. One, we have a process for renaming streets, and we have renamed some streets. The street that I live on is Jefferson, but it's also Bishop Dwight Wall Sr. Street or Drive or whatever. So we do rename streets. And I do think that, we do possibly not possibly, but we do need a process for renaming parks. So I think if we look at the two things separately, I believe as I read the ordinance correctly, there are some things that are listed that are required for renaming a street. And I'm believing those same things with the parks being added into this ordinance, that it would be the same. Council can always set up their own criteria for renaming parks or naming parks, because we certainly might come up with some new parks. I often wonder how parks were named. I wondered how Candy Cane got its name. And not long ago, I was privy to a conversation, and someone said, and I can't remember all the details now, but I know that Carrie Mattingly Park in Ainsworth Circle was named after a classmate of mine for her care for children. And I know some other parks, I think, and I always get mixed up on the name. Is the name Hefner or Hefner?
Edith Heffley.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know exactly how. I do know, and as I read with the streets, and it's in the ordinance, that it does require the community to agree to it. Plus, it also requires the person. I remember, I believe it was just maybe about 5 years ago, someone wanted to rename Catherine Street there by Second Baptist Church as Roberson Way, and the Robersons did not want that. So I think that though tonight we're voting on the process and the process only. So let's keep that in mind. And if there's no other discussion, Clerk Kalinga, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No.
Councilmember Somerville,
No.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
No.
Councilmember Simmons,
No.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen.
Yes.
With 3 yes and 4 no votes, the motion fails.
Great, thank you.
Council, moving on to the next item, ordinance 1374, an ordinance to amend City Code, Chapter 122, zoning periodic update. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the city has an interest in protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and whereas the city has an adopted master plan that reflects the policy goals of the city, and whereas the Planning Commission from time to time reviews the zoning ordinance performance with relation to these goals and general functionality, and whereas the Planning Commission has recommended the City Council adopt the proposed ordinance changes, now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approve the ordinance entitled Zoning Periodic Update 2021.
So move.
Support.
All right. And I see Andy has joined us. So, and live. You've got a presentation for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, good evening, council. I hope you can hear me okay. This is a zoning ordinance bug fix to try to fix essentially four sections of the ordinance. We try to do these once every year or 2 years to try to just clean things up, make things more consistent with the ordinance. Just make sure it's more readable and possibly, you know, lessening any kind of conflicts or troublesome areas. So I'm going to share my screen real quick because I apologize. The information I did send over to Andrew, I accidentally did it in track changes version. So you can't conveniently see, you know, what was there versus what's being changed. So. All right, can you see this document with the markup here, the whichever is shorter in red?
Don't see it.
What about now?
There we go.
Okay, awesome. So the first ordinance amendment is simple. It's just offering a little bit of clarity to restrict the height in R1, the lowest density residential district, to 30 feet or 2.5 stories, whichever is shorter. As you see the red mark up there, whichever is shorter would be the addition there. We don't want somebody claiming that, you know, they want to build, you know, 15 foot, or let's just say 20-foot stories for whatever hypothetical that would be, and build a 20-foot or a 40-foot house in R1 because they say that they're within the 2.5 stories at 2 stories. So that's amendment 1. Second one is a little bit more difficult. Actually, I would say it is the most difficult amendment of them all. It's regarding the forecourt private frontages. Our ordinance does require private frontages for what we call our building types. In other words, we try to regulate the space between the road or the right of way and the building's facade. In this case, you know, we have a forecourt as the private frontage for different kinds of apartment buildings, courtyard apartments. In red here, I noted that the court and building entry need not face the street, rather an open space, so long as there is direct pedestrian connection to the public sidewalk. And also the yard requirement that parking surfaces shall not contribute to the forecourt dimensions, clear span and width. So just as a little bit of background, this was a zoning board of appeals interpretation case that was decided back in November. The zoning board of appeals found that just because forecourt private frontages largely pertain to what we call the courtyard apartment building type, these are sometimes buildings that generally face an open space rather than the street itself. So this amendment would clearly state that the forecourt is an area that does not face the street, but rather such an open space, as long as there is that direct pedestrian passage, such as an interior sidewalk. And that we further define that this forecourt area is one that is still, you know, a court area that can have, you know, formal gardens or outdoor dining or entries. It's typically a space that is 12 by 12 foot wide and 12 feet deep that leads to the building's entry. And we further emphasize that a parking surface shall not contribute to this forecourt dimension. That means somebody can't have a apartment that opens up to a parking lot and the applicant state, oh, you know, I have my forecourt, it's right here, it's this parking lot. No, we want a 12 by 12 courtyard entry no matter what, even if it faces a parking lot or a different open space, at least you would have that 12 by 12 space. If you have any questions on that one, I totally understand. So we'll move on though to the third amendment. You can still, I hope you can still see the markup here. This is just cleaning up home occupations a little bit, you know, in the face of COVID-19, we kind of wanted to look at home occupations a bit because a lot of more people are working from home. One of these items was we saw that it was really weird that real estate offices could not be a home occupation. You know, we allow for, let's say, law offices, architecture offices, accountant offices. That's as long as there's no more than one guest on the premises at any time. And that there's not walk-in service, you know, you're not advertising for walk-in service. There's no signage. It's a 300 square foot or less home office essentially. So we thought that real estate offices were kind of odd considering we allow things like accountant offices, law offices. You know, that's a very low intensity use to have, you know, for somebody to want to have a real estate office in their own home. We also cleared up daycare centers. We actually got this as a public comment at the Planning Commission meeting, that the way daycare centers were worded here might be a little deterring for somebody who wants to move to the city and open up their state licensed daycare center, which in other words is called a family daycare home or group daycare home. Those are family daycare homes are uses that have 1 to 6 children on the premises at any time. And then group daycare homes are premises that have 7 to 12. And by state act, we are supposed to allow the family daycare homes, the 1 to 6 as a residential use in any residential district. We can't even regulate for those. We just wanted to clear up that language regarding daycare centers and even adult foster care homes, because those are uses that are allowed in residential districts and for just out of homes. The fourth amendment and final amendment is just clearing up surfacing for 1 and 2 family homes, parking surfacing and driveways. So here we just add the statements that surfacing for parking areas and driveways shall be no closer than 2 feet from property lines except for where they connect to the public way. And the city planner may waive this requirement in whole or in part with a finding that the lot shares common access and common parking with adjoining lot, or that stormwater, landscaping, and other similar concerns have been adequately addressed with other methods. We've gotten complaints before about someone's driveway or someone's stormwater is running onto my property, causing flooding on my property. So we wanted to stipulate this 2-foot rule here. Obviously, there are a lot of nonconformities here in the city where people do share a driveway. So we just want to make sure that we do have a little bit of a waiver type of leniency there when there are common accesses, and when you really can't do anything else, that you can, you know, let's say you're forced to put a driveway within that 2-foot rule, as long as you show to me or whoever the city planner is that you've graded it in a way, or you have, you know, the appropriate stormwater infrastructure and landscaping to just alleviate any concerns there. So those are the 4 amendments. I understand if you have questions, especially on the 1 forecourt one, but let me know if you have questions.
I moved to open public hearing. Isn't that first?
Or
Andy, could you stop sharing your screen, please?
Oh yeah, good call. Let me try to do that. Okay.
Mayor, you're muted.
Sorry. No, I was saying I was waiting for the screen to stop sharing to open the public hearing.
Okay.
But because I didn't know, did any of council have questions about the screen sharing before we go?
Oh, I did, but I thought that came after the public comment.
Okay. All right. It will, but I didn't know if you wanted something while it was up there, a question
No,
specifically why it was there. Okay, that's what I was after. Okay, Mr. Ling, would you open the public hearing, please? Thank you.
Yes, council. Desiree Simmons in the attendees list has their hand raised. I'll allow them to speak now.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to comment on this. I was around the daycare use. I thank you for explaining all those updates. And just to say, if I understand it, I just wanted to clarify that by state, that 1 to 6 children is allowed within home occupations. So this change wouldn't necessarily affect that. I'm asking also in part because of during COVID, a lot of folks have been talking about things like learning pods and a lot of different kinds of usage to try to just to try to kind of deal with having children at home learning remotely. And I think that there's a lot of folks that are thinking about what this looks like even longer term. So I just wanted to kind of confirm what that is, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there another?
Council, that was the only individual with their hand raised in the attendee list.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wilcoxon, you said you had some questions.
Well, first, we'll have to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Resolved
Is
by
there
the
a
council.
motion?
Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the public hearing to consider an ordinance titled zoning periodic update 2021 be officially closed.
Move.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I hear two.
Aye.
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 Thank
Sorry,
you.
forgot about
Okay.
that.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcoxon.
Thank you. I am a little confused by the whole forecourt thing, and I realize they can be facing the back of the building, they can be facing parking lots, but I'm just trying to figure out what the benefit is of defining that. You know, it's just like it's there. Calling it that is okay, that's great, but what does that really mean? I mean, you know, why would somebody I guess it's not clear what difference this makes in the fact that there was a case, and I don't understand what that case was about, why this was there. So I'm just curious about that. Does this impact any businesses that are currently there? So for example, you know, we're dealing with street closures and things like that, and I could see that this could be a benefit to businesses. Does this impact any of the businesses on West Cross Street that have things going out into the alley?
No, it doesn't, because this is a really rare case, I'll say that. The only building type that uses forecourt private frontages as a required private frontage is actually the courtyard apartment building type. So the only time that this really goes into effect would be if the building type proposed in a development is a courtyard apartment building type. It's a really rare effect, but somebody tried to claim that because they had this big parking area in between two of their courtyard apartments, that parking area was actually their forecourt. And because it was at least 12 foot wide and there was at least 12 foot deep, that should count as their forecourt, and they didn't need to build you know, this formal kind of entryway in front of their each building's entry. The ZBA Zoning Board of Appeals decided that no, that type of scenario should not count as a forecourt. The forecourt should further be defined as, you know, a definite delineated space that's at least 12 foot wide, at least 12 foot deep in front of a building's entry. That can be used as gardens or dining or just seating or just landscaping. It's just a way to further clarify what we mean by forecourts.
Okay.
In terms of commercial buildings, I don't think this would ever come up because commercial buildings
Don't really have that.
kind of building type.
Let me ask a question right here very quickly. Do we have any of, can you give me an example of a building like this in the city? Do we have any here now? Or is this for future buildings that would want to come?
There was an example in the city. It was 212 North Lincoln. That's where this whole case derived. I can, if it works to share my screen again, I can just run through kind of that case if that makes sense. Otherwise, I do have a few township examples too. Just if we want to stay out of the city, stay, completely not site related. I could share a few examples and try to walk through the visualization if that works.
That would help me. I don't know if anybody else would like to see that, but if you would, please, thank you.
Okay. I can share my screen again here.
Can I just clarify my question?
Yes.
Yeah.
The language in this section in 483, it says, this is a definition. It may include this, it may include that, it may, but it's not clear to me what the benefit of declaring that something is a forecourt has. You could put a wall up. You don't have to put a wall up. There's no declaration here that there's a benefit to even doing this. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's like there's no, to me, there's no defining point to this. It's like we have this definition, but why are we considering it?
Yeah. The intent of the ordinance is really to just try to make a space in front of the building's entry more inviting to the user. Just try to create our buildings and environments a little bit more inviting for the person coming in from the sidewalk, walking from the sidewalk, just trying to benefit walkability, make the front entry, a little bit more defined and easy to pick out and access. I think really that's the basis of this. And that was the whole basis of having an ordinance that has these private frontages defined to begin with. Some other private frontages are stoops, porches. Those are the most common examples for houses in apartment.
So I should be looking for the context somewhere else in the zoning.
I think to be honest, considering all the private frontages might help in terms of context.
All right.
I can share my screen though and just run through an example here.
Would you please?
Yeah, let me pull this up real quick. Okay, so can you see this yellow shade with this weird shaped apartment building?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is, somebody might, if this was in the city, somebody might say, hey, I'm looking to, redesign my building. I generally want to keep this design. And I want to say that this middle parking area is my forecourt. And with the way this ordinance is amended, this couldn't be the forecourt. There would need to be a forecourt built in to every building entry here. Let's say there's an entry here on this wall. They would need to clearly define a 12 by 12 space that has landscaping, for example. It could be a patio. It could be, you know, to have some tables out there, but they would need to define a 12 by 12 area, and they would also need a sidewalk, an interior sidewalk, linking that area to the main public sidewalk. This is similar to the example we did get with the ZBA is somebody, you know, wanted to have their middle parking area like this as their forecourt, and they wanted to get away from having, you know, a more defined, more formal 12 by 12 space in front of the building's entry. ZBA ended up saying that no, you know, this parking lot does not count as your forecourt. You must define a 12 by 12 building entry area as your forecourt.
So what benefit would they get from redefining that?
Again, because the zoning board of appeals had that interpretation, we would continue that interpretation into other cases. It's always just best practice that we turn zoning board of appeals interpretations into our zoning laws.
Sure, I'm just trying to figure out why the person wanted to have it rezoned. I don't understand what benefit they're going to get from having it.
Oh no,
having
this
that
is
changed.
that person didn't choose to rezone it. Us as staff and planning commission decided to try to write our zoning ordinance with this amendment as closely to the zoning board of appeals as interpretation as possible.
But so when the person put in to have the zoning board of appeals address this,
yeah,
what was the impetus for that landowner to want to do that?
They wanted to fix up a few apartment buildings. There was 2 apartment buildings on one site. There was a middle area similar to this with a parking lot that split them up. And they did not want to provide a 12 by 12, you know, landscaped area leading to the building entries. They wanted to just say that this was the forecourt, this parking lot. I went back and said, no, I don't think that counts as a forecourt. I think you need to provide a very intentional 12 by 12 area of landscaping, of a patio space, something clearly defined as your forecourt, not, you know, just a general parking lot space here. Zoning Board of Appeals ended up interpreting it that, yes, they need, you know, that big parking lot can't count as your forecourt. So that architect would then need to, you know, redesign their plans to then put an intentional minimum of 12 by 12 area in front of the building entry that is, you know, can be suitable for gatherings, for tables. Just, it can even be just a landscaped path as long as it's clearly defined there.
So what you're showing us, the building is built around the parking lot.
Yeah, and you could have that in this zoning ordinance definition, just as long as right in front of each building entry, you stipulate a clearly defined 12 by 12 minimum area for patios, outdoor gathering, or just a sidewalk that's landscaped.
So the point here is that so that you don't have motel-like structures.
Yeah,
as
that's
apartments.
that's another way to
All right,
look at it.
I got it. All right.
Just, yeah, very formal and intentional building entries.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that analogy, Mr. Wilcoxon. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I did have another question about section 531. Does this affect Airbnbs?
So 531.
Defining the home occupations?
So we wouldn't classify an Airbnb as a home occupation. we don't really define an Airbnb in our zoning ordinance. Ideally, those would be a rental, I believe, and should be inspected as a rental. But I know that Airbnbs are really an interesting concept that I think needs, or at least there's been proposed some further state law regarding Airbnbs that I just don't think anything's been adopted yet.
Okay, so we don't have any zoning definition for
Yeah.
Airbnbs. And so my other question of, is it permissible to have Airbnbs in a space that's being rented already? So that would be a sublet. You know, if there's nothing on the city books, then we're looking to the state for guidance on that, right?
Yeah, essentially. We don't zone, right now, we don't allow for Airbnbs, but we also don't zone them out. So they're just kind of an area there. Ideally, I believe all rentals should be inspected though. So it's kind of a hybrid building department and zoning question. It's a good question though, and a question that I think we can look into a little bit.
I mean, the reason I ask is because there was a recent post of someone wanting to share their their unit in the Thompson block as an Airbnb,
Okay.
and it got crazy amounts of comments. But I just wondered why that's not addressed in here, or where we had that addressed. But it sounds like nowhere. So I'm done.
You're done? Okay.
I'll be quiet.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation also too, Andy. I just have according to like what we're looking at, it says that the goal of the zoning text amendments is to make the zoning ordinance more readable and more consistent. Do you feel like with the alterations made to the language, does it meet the needs? Does it do that, Andy?
Yeah, I believe so. And I know that the forecourt thing might seem a little bit contradictory to that, but in terms of like the city planner's administration of the zoning code and kind of coordination with architects when this issue could come up again in a development, I believe it would indeed make the ordinance a lot more enforceable and a lot more clear if this situation ever came up again. And with the other ordinances, with the other amendments as well.
Okay, and in your opinion, would that increase like design functionality? What would
I do. Yeah, sorry to cut you off for a minute. I believe there would be a lot more emphasis on design, and buildings would indeed, I believe, in my opinion, be a lot more engaging and just desirable to the public when they do have like a forecourt open space in front of their entry rather than just simply a parking lot.
And my last question is, would you happen to have some type of list of issues or obstacles that you've met because of the lack of these 4 alterations in the text?
Yeah, I can just speak through a few anecdotal examples.
Okay.
For example, the height issue was once brought up. Somebody was wanting to redesign their attic, and they wanted to redesign their attic, but they didn't want to go super excessively high. But I realized when they were explaining what they wanted to do, I realized that somebody could indeed put a very tall attic space on top of their already 2-story building, as long as it was half of a floor or half of a story. And what we define by half a story is you can have that 3rd floor as long as the usable space is half of what is on that 2nd floor, the floor below it. That
sounds like Chinese. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Maybe a better example is somebody could build a 40-foot high house that's 2 stories, 20-foot high stories each, and claim that they are in compliance with the zoning ordinance, because right now the zoning ordinance simply says 30 feet or 2 stories. It doesn't say whichever is shorter.
Okay.
that's the intent of the R1 district. As much as, you know, I don't believe the intent of the R1 district is let's have super tall structures here.
So we're taking out the room for interpretation and making it more clear.
Yeah, and just defining it a little bit better.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then the home occupations, we get questions on home occupations a lot, accountants, realtors, you know, lawyers who want to use 300 square foot of space or less for their home office, have one guest on the premises at any times. This was just making that more consistent all around by just allowing the real estate offices as such a use. Parking, we get complaints sometimes if someone's driveway is sloped in a way that sheets runoff straight onto another property. In the winter, that can be an issue too with icing. You know, it can make someone's driveway very clear of ice, but their neighboring driveway just a sheet of ice because all of that freezing rain sheets onto their driveway. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you, it did.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, I just, I do have some concerns about the, you know, further defining the height restriction just because it might, you know, decrease the size of, let's say someone wants to put a, you know, a rental unit or something in their attic where they're living. You know, it might decrease to some extent the amount of housing that we have. So I'm a little concerned about that, but maybe that's something we can address at a later time a little bit more fully.
Yeah, if you may, I can respond to that. That's just for the R1 zoning district, so the lowest density zoning district. That's where this height maximum applies. So that's a district that only allows for single family, one family, you know, one unit structures anyways.
Well, I mean, yeah, we've had conversations, and I'm not a big fan of the R1 district in general.
Yeah, and I know that. Yeah,
it's a kind of a anyway. Yeah, we talked to, you know, it's like 6 months ago now about the home occupations. I'm glad the daycare thing was added. And, you know, for some context, we don't know exactly when these things were changed, but there was a lot of home-based business going on, particularly in the Park Ridge neighborhood. And, you know, some zoning things were changed when that area was moved down to R1. And, you know, a lot of the businesses that used to be there are now found on the you can't do this kind of business list. I'm not saying there's a cause there, but it's an interesting correlation. I think generally this is good. These are just bug fixes, right? I mean, there's nothing, they're not major things.
Yeah, they're not major. If we were doing something major, we'd sure want to engage the public a bit more, and do some kind of open meetings, public meetings before. So, such as increasing density, for example.
Yeah, that's a fight. Okay, so thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, Kirk Kalinga, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Council, moving on to the next section of the agenda, the consent agenda. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the following items be approved. Resolution number 2021-029, approving the minutes of February 2nd, 2021. Resolution number 2021-030, approving appointments to boards and commissions.
So move.
Support.
You,
Mayor Richardson,
yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Council, moving on to the next item. We have resolutions, motions, and discussions. First resolution is 2021-031. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the adoption of guidelines for poverty exemption is required of the City Council, and whereas the principal residence of persons who the assessor and board of review determines by reason of poverty to be unable to contribute to the public charge is eligible for exemption in whole or in part from taxation under Public Act 390 of 1994, MCL 211.7U. And whereas pursuant to Public Act 390 of 1994, the City of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County adopts the following guidelines of the Board of Review to implement. The guidelines shall include but not be limited to the specific income and asset levels of the claimant and all persons residing in the household, including any property tax credit returns filed in the current or immediately preceding year. To be eligible under the section, a person shall do all the following on an annual basis: be an owner of and occupy as a principal residence the property for which an exemption is requested. Public Act 390 of 1994 requires that all persons residing in the household must submit copies of the following signed documents: City of Ypsilanti poverty exemption application, federal income tax returns, state income tax returns, homestead property tax credit claim form, Michigan I-040CR. Also include copies of all supporting documentation, i.e. W-2 forms, 1099, schedules, etc. The Board of Review shall consider income from all sources and form from all occupants of the homestead when determining whether an applicant meets poverty exemption requirements as adopted by the City Council. A poverty exemption affidavit, Department of Treasury Form 4988, must be filled for persons residing in the residence who are not required to file federal or state income tax returns in the current year or immediately preceding year. The combined assets of all persons residing in the household minus the value of principal residence must not exceed $20,000. Assets including but are not limited to real estate other than the principal residence, personal property, motor vehicles, recreational vehicles, and equipment, certificates of deposit, saving accounts, checking accounts, stocks, bonds, life insurance, retirement funds, etc. Produce a valid driver's license or other form of identification if requested. Produce if requested a deed, land contract, or other evidence of ownership of the property for which an exemption is requested. Meet the federal poverty income guidelines as defined and determined annually by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. The following are the 2020 federal poverty income guidelines that are updated annually by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. The annual income includes income for all persons residing in the household. The total household income must be less than or equal to the guidelines below in order to be considered for this type of exemption. Family of one, 12,760. Family of two, 17,240. Family of three, 21,720. Family of four, 26,200. Family of five, 30,680. Family of six, 35,160. Family of seven, 39,640. Family of eight, 44,120. For each and additional person, 4,480. The applicants may not have ownership interest in any other real estate other than the homestead property. If home has been purchased within the previous 2 years, all closing documentation must be included. The City of Ypsilanti allows for a partial poverty exemption to be granted. A partial poverty exemption is an exemption of percentage of the taxable value of principal residence rather than the entire taxable value. The formula for calculating partial exemption is as follows: in case where households income of property as herein defined exceeds 10,000 but meets the federal standards, the assessment shall be adjusted so the out-of-pocket property taxes as best estimated based on the previous year's millage and after deducting state property tax refunds equals no more than 5% of the household income. It should be recognized that the poverty exemption reduction is a form of temporary assistance of those who are undergoing a difficult financial time. Any relief granted is for the current year only. The Board of Review may reject any application from the information contained if it appears fraudulent, misleading, inaccurate, or incomplete. Failure to complete all sections of the application and or failure to submit signed copies of all tax forms or required documentation will result in the poverty exemption application being denied. The Board of Review must have complete, accurate data in order to review this appeal. In certain instances, the Board of Review may consider extenuating circumstances as a basis of poverty exemption where the total household income exceeds the established income guidelines. Due dates, the application of the exemption shall be filed after January 1st, but 1 day prior to the last day of the December Board of Review during the year in which the exemption is requested. The filling of this claim constitutes an appearance before the Board of Review for the purposes of preserving the right of appeal to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. The City of Ypsilanti poverty exemption guidelines and application will be updated annually with the current year poverty income guidelines as established by the United States Department of Health and Human Services without further resolution. If alternative guidelines are adopted by this governing body, a new resolution will be required. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that the Board of Review shall follow the above stated policy and federal guidelines in granting or denying an exemption unless the Board of Review determines that there are substantial and compelling reasons that there should be deviation from the policy and federal guidelines. And these reasons are communicated in writing to the claimant. And that's that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moved.
Good
Mercy.
I
job.
thank you. I think
Support.
I think one of us would have said very quickly and let the rest be read into the record.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I did hear, I think I heard Council Member Morgan move. Was there a support?
Yeah, Councilmember Wilcoxen.
All right, good.
Oh,
Thank you. All right. Any questions or comments?
I'm very interested to know if there's a number to fit. This applies to qualified low-income individuals who are the owners of homestead property, correct?
Yes.
Is that a big population within our city?
Okay, we have someone with their hand up. Courtney.
Hi, Mayor and Councilman. We have yearly about 9 applicants that apply for the hardship application.
About 9. Is there a pool of money that they're starting with? Is this annual, like every year? How much money is in this account and how long does it take to run out? And what's the average payment of tax exemption?
Well, there's no account and no money as far as the assessing department is involved in. The poverty application is to reduce the taxable value and give them some tax relief temporarily for the year based on if they qualify with all the info that Andrew had read.
Is there an average number of tax exemption like if 9 people annually, is it like $1,000? What's the support look like?
That I would probably have to email you maybe that information from our office. I could provide that for you if you were looking for like a tax dollar.
I'm interested in if we're saving thousands of dollars or people saving hundreds. And I know people in certain situations, it can mean a lot. So I'm not being, I hope I'm not being insensitive. I was just wondering, I'm thinking, is it hundreds of people that own houses and not too many own homesteads and not enough people know about this program, which is why only a few are benefiting from it? Right. Or is it just so few?
They're part of the asset test is based on the federal poverty guidelines as far as income is concerned. And if you look at the federal poverty guidelines and the income in the application, I think it makes it kind of difficult for, just a large number of people to apply because the amounts the state set are so low.
So, for a family of 3 making $21,000, this is like a homestead owner and a
Mhm.
family of 3. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That seems like a very rare population with these. It seems like people who are owning home. And give me a definition of a homestead property, would you?
Owner occupied.
Okay.
Primary, yeah, your primary residence. So you own and occupy, and that's where you're registered to vote, you live full-time.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure, no problem.
Any other questions or comments?
There's a hand.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, I think it's great. You know, I think it's important, you know, to do as much as possible to keep low-income folks who do own their homes in their homes, because, you know, a lot of times the alternative is, you know, rental that is unaffordable compared to a house. So I would, you know, I would be interested, as Mr. Morgan was saying, in finding out if maybe there's a way we could publicize the program more or get the word out, but I guess maybe that's down to us. Because I don't think enough people know about it, maybe, you know, and the guidelines do seem a little stringent, but there may not be anything we can do about that.
Well, I do know through Washtenaw County, they collect the poverty applications from each assessor's office every year. So when a family or a home comes up as far as tax-wise and possible foreclosure, that's the first thing. I think it's Bonnie Geist, who handles the program through Washtenaw, will hand somebody who resides in the city of Ypsilanti a poverty application and say, go see Courtney, you know, see if you can get some help with this. We can only do current year by law. So if they have previous years back billed, you know, there's not something we could do, but that would be something to consider or think about. I do have our current guidelines and application every year posted on our website, but we could think of other ways to make it more known.
Okay, and then is there, I think that would be good, but is there a requirement that can their taxes be otherwise current? So for example, can you say like, hey, I have a hardship and I can't pay my taxes which are coming due? Do you have to, or do you have to wait until they get kicked to the county on March 10th or 1st or whenever it is?
No, they can very much so be current. In fact, coming up is our March border review, and where I encourage most of our applicants to apply for the March board so that it's prior to the summer and the winter, so it catches it before the tax bills come out and before they can fall behind or default.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Wilcoxon?
Thank you, Courtney, for the information. My first question has already been addressed by Anthony and Brian, but I don't know, how are people finding out about this? And we've already addressed that. You said there's like 9 applicants per year. I'm assuming that all of them get the exemption, or is there a percentage of people that don't get the exemption?
We have about 6 to 9 that I've known. They come every year, and they are granted the exemption.
Okay.
Yeah, because our guidelines also state we take into consideration out-of-pocket medical expense and the border review. The state has currently rewritten how assessors across the board will now calculate the taxable value reduction. And it's going to be based on a percentage. And that's actually why this application is coming back in front of you guys again tonight. It's housekeeping on the application to make sure that assessors are doing their jobs uniformly across the board in Michigan. But we do grant our applicants an exemption and over here and look at all their points and then what's going on in their life. So
I have a lot of questions about that clarification. I read through the memo, I read through the resolution, I read through the city council policy, and it seemed like there were a number of points that were addressed different ways in different portions of this information. And in one place it says the review must grant a full exemption equal to 100% reduction in the value, taxable value, or a partial exemption.
Yes.
But then in other places it says only 50%, and then it doesn't address anything less than 50%.
So so the state is coming up with 150-25 for assessors to grant that percentage reduction in taxable value. By all means, they can continue to grant the 100. The 50% was mentioned in the literature because when we zero out a taxable value at board review, or not necessarily us, the board members agree to exempt them 100%. They don't, from what I understand, I'm not an income tax expert, but they miss out on that income tax credit that they could be getting and pocketing when they have zero taxable value. So a lot of our applicants don't have to file for income tax because they don't make enough. But this is a way to encourage them to still file at least state so that they can gain some of that money back in their pocket.
Okay.
But by all means, the board can still grant them 100%. The 50% is just a recommendation.
Got it. One of the other points that I found confusing was when you're looking at the combined assets, in one place it includes real estate other than the principal residence. And so in other places it's saying, well, the owner can't have any other property, but does that mean that when that's listed as something that's taken into account, that somebody else living in that house who's not the owner could own another property? So is it just that the owner of the property can't have another property? I found that kind of confusing.
So, well, the owner that's applying for the application, they cannot own another home in the state of Michigan because it's considered an asset. So it's when you're reducing taxable value, you're reducing the tax money that's going to the city. And if they have another home that they're not occupying as their primary residence, then why couldn't they sell that property to pay their city taxes?
Exactly. So in the other places where it says, that's being taken into account, if they're already excluded, then why would real estate of another property be included in the assets elsewhere in these documents?
Maybe I'm not, I guess I'm not understanding the question. I'm sorry.
So in the resolution,
Yes.
There's a description of the assets that are being considered. And one of the things that it says is real estate other than the principal residence. And if owning other property excludes people from being able to apply for this exemption, then why is that even in there?
Maybe I could ask Mr. Barr in terms of the wording, or maybe if it's a legal aspect, we have to put something like that in there. I'm not sure, but I could get back with you on that one.
Okay. And I was just kind of confused by the example that was given as well. It's always helpful for me to see one of these things worked out so I understand what's going on. In some places it says, the combined assets shouldn't be, must not exceed $20,000. Other places it says it shouldn't exceed $10,000. And which number is that?
Well, I think the $10,000 is applying to the percentage that was used in the prior application to calculate what out-of-pocket expense should go towards taxes. Now the state is uniformly telling assessors we have to determine 100, 50, or 25. So there's no more small percentage of different calculations and wording throughout assessing practices with assessors. So it's 150 or 25.
And so the relationship of that $10,000 or $20,000 in combined assets versus the schedule from the federal government in terms of the income for those households, I'm not clear how they relate to each other, because in one sense you're saying, you can't have more than $50,000 or $20,000, but then a family of 8 is able to have $44,000. And so when do those numbers kick in?
I will have to take a look and get back with you on that, so I can answer you more efficiently.
Okay, I've got a lot of questions, so I'll just email you or give you a call and figure it out.
That would be wonderful, or you can come up to my office too. So.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I just had 2 short questions.
Mr. Morgan, yes.
Excuse me, Ms. Duggar, how long is the application process when someone applies from applying to being granted the tax exemption? How long is that process generally?
Well, the board determines it right there at the meeting, not necessarily in front of the person, but the decision is granted at the meeting, and then they're notified within 10 days by letter.
So is there, from the time they fill out the application to the time the board decides at that meeting, what's the usual time of that?
Well, they have 3 opportunities throughout the year to apply. They can apply at March, they can apply at July or December board review. Posting goes out in the newspaper and is on assessment notices for the March meetings. And then July and December's are posted to the building. But they can contact me any time of year in between those meetings to get an application, talk with me about qualifications, and I guide them on how to fill it out, what documents I need, and when what meeting they'll be attending to apply for it.
Thank you. How long has this been a part of the city? How long has this program or this tax easement or tax exemption been existing?
Mr. Morgan, I've been here, I think, 10 years, and it's been prior to me.
Okay, that long. Okay.
I can look into history, for you.
Great. So the reason why I asked about how much money, like as far as individually, because the process is so extensive, and what they're asking for is so. I don't want to call it invasive, but and I know it costs more to be poor. So I don't know if it's a few $100s versus a few $1,000s, but the question is there a cap on how many years consecutively a person can apply?
There is no cap. They have to reapply each year.
And go through that same process every year?
Yep, because you could have a family, maybe somebody in the family has lost their job one year and they apply for a relief. The following year, they at the end of that year, they gain a job and they're back on their feet the next year. It's like our veterans exemptions too. It's the same thing through the state of Michigan. It's just verifying each year that qualification is still there.
And the reason why, this is the last thing I'm adding to it, this is more of a comment, because if you have people in poverty and some folks who really have generally no change in their income, or no change in their lifestyle, and if they're in poverty and they own a home and they own a homestead, it's almost conclusive that they'll be using this year after year after year. And so if you own a home, that means 20, 30, 40, 50 years even, they may end up being dependent on this. Not to say it's not, so it's a necessary, it can be helpful. However, I'm seeing it as something that's necessary that can be beneficial for a lot of people. However, I'm seeing that people who are in poverty, I don't see them getting out of this program. I see them needing it for the length of the time they own a home if very few things change. So that's what I'm asking. That's the parallel. So I want to know about how much is really saving them on their home being impoverished here in the city. So if you can get me those numbers, I'd be very interested.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I have no further questions, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Is that it? Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, I was just going to say I might be able to help Mr. Wilcoxon on the question about the 2 properties. And I think the combined assets are the applicant plus anyone else living in the house. So, let's say you're the applicant, you have the primary residence with the homestead exemption, but someone else lives there and I don't know, they own a dirt lot somewhere up north and it has a taxable value of $1,000, then you would have to include that asset. And, but it might not put you over the edge.
I mean, that's kind of what I thought. Is the homeowner isn't allowed to own other property, but if somebody living there has other property and it doesn't go over that limit, then that's the only scenario I could think of that would pertain to that.
Not that there aren't nice lots up north. There's some nice property up there.
And I think someone asked the question, how long had the city been doing this? They were doing it since I've been on council. So that's been close to 20 years or 20 years. So it's been, we've had it come before us every year. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Council, moving on to the next resolution, resolution number 2021-032, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti. Whereas the City Council of the City of Ypsilanti has approved a goal to explore new creative options for increased traffic calming and crosswalk safety in neighborhoods and main streets. And whereas adjoining residents and other stakeholders have identified roads within the city where speeding is a significant concern. These include Mansfield Street between West Cross and Congress, East Cross Street between River and Prospect, Prospect Road between the city limits and East Cross, and 2nd Avenue between Michigan and Monroe. Whereas the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study has offered to partner with the city on exploring short-term improvements to these roadways to attempt to mitigate excessive speeding. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council authorizes staff to proceed with the partnership with Watts to implement short-term traffic calming improvements.
Is there a motion?
Don't move.
Support.
Been moved and supported.
Echo.
Hey, can I quickly say, sorry, I talked to the clerk earlier and I just wanted to announce that I have to step away from the meeting for a few moments. I just wanted to give you all heads up. So if I miss a vote, just please excuse me.
We will do that.
Well, thank you.
But I do support the next resolution.
Thanks for letting us know. Okay. I see Ms. Wessler is with us. Ms. Wessler.
Yes, I'll give just a brief presentation, but Suzanne Flowers from Watts is actually here to give a far more in-depth presentation upon the proposal that is before us tonight. As you all know, we have a number of roadways upon which we get seasonal complaints about speeding. These are generally our larger roadways like Prospect, 2nd, Mansfield, which don't fall under our current policy for traffic calming devices and wouldn't be suited for speed humps. So in looking for alternate solutions to help calm the traffic in these particular roadways, Watts actually approached us because they had recently performed a project with the city of Chelsea on some similar roadways there and wanted to do something and partner with us here in the city of Ypsilanti. So we were obviously very open to that idea. And Suzanne is here tonight to tell us a little bit more about that. And so with no further ado, here's Suzanne.
Thank you, Bonnie, and thank you, Council, for having me here this evening. I'm hoping that my presentation will be pulled up in just a moment.
Welcome.
Would you like me to make you a co-host so you can share your screen, or did you
No,
just want
I'd
me to?
love it if you would just do it,
Sure.
just in case. And they keep things kind of moving along. I don't want to delay. I realize you have a full agenda still before you. So just real quick, Bonnie introduced me. I'm a transportation planner at the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study, and I've been there about 6.5 years. And so just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we're calling a tactical urbanism concept project for the city of Ypsilanti. And also to let you know that we have been in discussions with St. Joseph Hospital Systems, and they would be a more than willing participant to partner with the city as they were in the city of Chelsea. Next slide, please. So just real quickly, the tactical urbanism, what we call is just a very short-term demonstration is what we did in Chelsea. And so that was for 30 days. And it was really focused on safety and non-motorized connectivity. It was about a 1.5 mile section of roadway with some existing sidewalks, but we're really looking to calm traffic. There were connections to schools, the border-to-border trail crossing, mainly residential areas, and also near some railroad tracks and difficult crossing areas. Next slide, please. The main project elements that we did in the city of Chelsea were enhanced crosswalks, which the next slide will show you some images of these, bike lanes, some curb extensions to shorten that spacing for pedestrians to kind of intersect with automobile traffic, making a little bit more clear where there is existing on-street parking, sharrows or shared lane markings for bicycles, some larger stop bars because we saw cars encroaching into the crosswalk areas, again, making pedestrians more vulnerable, wayfinding signs to get people to, key destinations, and there was some temporary removal of on-street parking. Next slide, please. So you can see in front of you that there's just some concepts that we deployed in Chelsea. The image to the top left shows a sharrow. It has the chevron, which helps with the kind of directionality of where bicyclists should be queuing up in the roadway, in which direction that they should be traveling. Below that, you see a striped bike lane, which the temporary parking was removed, and that was supported by the residents and council. You can see the DPW folks in Chelsea making the crosswalks a little bit brighter, a little bit larger than just the existing space. And then you can see the stop bar a little bit larger. And again, a wayfinding sign just to direct people to some of the best community assets. Next slide, please. Bonnie asked that I share with you all some of the project expenses, and I do want to let you all know that this was post-project. We were able to kind of keep a running tally of all of the expenses that the city incurred. Our kind of staff support was more of an in-kind support. The hard costs from St. Joseph Mercy Health System. And then we did actually ask for, the city of Chelsea asked for like a dynamic message board, and the road commission was able to provide that to us at actually like no cost. It was just a way to kind of alert people to a larger section of roadway of the project and how long that would be deployed. We were able to move that after the project was finished up. But this gives you a very broad estimate of these projects, because this was a 30-day demonstration project. We needed to have the paint stick on the ground a bit longer. Sometimes these sort of pop-up projects only last for a day or even a weekend. But this gives a breakdown of some of these hard costs that a community would be, like the city of Ypsilanti would be, we'd be looking to support and provide some support with. Next slide, please. So just as some general feedback, we did some pre-project data collection with the residents who would be impacted, and then within the city of Chelsea, and then the Chelsea area residents. And one of the things that we found that we really needed to make sure that we collected was pre and post project traffic speeds. The city of Chelsea simply did not have some of that equipment in order to collect that information. And I've actually spoken with Bonnie, and you folks do have that, which is wonderful. When we are looking at doing kind of speed reduction, it is important that we can substantiate whether or not specific designs or treatment options can help us reduce the speed that residents are, concerned with. Another piece that we really wanted to focus on for projects of this nature is more routine communication with adjacent property owners. This all kind of happened at the very beginning of COVID. We had these great ideas of how we wanted to engage the public. And then we also had this extensive heat wave in July. And so we know that we need to do mailings, maybe in a more routine fashion every 2 to 3 weeks. That way, the residents who may be impacted by projects, even though it's a temporary project, will know what to expect, how long these kind of project elements to be around for. We also wanted to provide educational materials. A lot of folks were not familiar with, the shared lane markings, for example. They didn't really know how to navigate them. And we want to make sure that motorists and pedestrians and bicyclists all understand their specific role that they have to play when it comes to safety, not only safety for themselves, but safety for everyone else who's using the transportation system and network. But overall, we really did receive very positive feedback from the community. We did a post-project survey. We got over 100 survey results, which in my line of work is a lot. And so we were really happy. There's a couple people who, generally didn't want to give up parking. And so again, we had city council and city leadership make those final determinations on the project design, but they were informed by the public. Next slide, please. So I want to just provide a couple concepts of ideas that I went to IPSI not that long ago and just kind of sat on the sidewalk for a few minutes, kind of saw the way things moved, and just kind of got at some ideas that we wanted to present to you today. These are not firmed in place ideas, just concepts to kind of get people to think and to react to. And that's sort of what we would do with members of the public as well. So a couple concepts to think about would be like intersection treatments. One of the things that we saw at the mouth of Michigan Avenue from 2nd to Monroe is, oh my goodness, that is an incredibly wide intersection. It is definitely designed for vehicles to come off of Michigan Avenue and zip down 2nd. And so we think that maybe some, like a little bit of an intersection treatment, like a curb extension. You see these white kind of vertical bollards coming up. Those are also, very safe for motorized traffic. They're meant to be flexible in case they're ever hit. We also used very effectively in Chelsea, just some very minimal on-street parking, some striping. I know that on, again, 2nd, there are signs that say, which side of the street you can park on. We did see people parking there, and it is amazing once you take away all of those cars, how open the street looks. And so if we can just give a little bit of a visual cue that there's something else that could be going on here, we did see, at least anecdotally, people were slowing down. Another really effective and research-based measure that MDOT has actually deployed and researched are these gateway treatments. I call them the R16 gateway treatments, these kind of floppy bollards, which remind our motorists as they're entering into a slower, more residential street to slow down and to be able to look for other users within the roadway system. Next slide, please. Some concepts that we could try from Prospect to River, again, concept only, would be maybe some painted sharrows next to the existing on-street parking. Again, sharrows really help bicyclists queue up to where they should be located. We can use these markings to make sure that they're not too close to parked cars so they avoid getting hit or doored, as we like to call in the biking world. And again, since we're leading towards one of the border-to-border kind of connections, this could be a good way to direct traffic towards that, direct also using our wayfinding signs to our businesses and local amenities. And another potential concept could be like an intersection treatment as we enter Depot Town. We have these really great gray and orange decals that are already existing, and you have that big kind of sign as you get in there. Maybe there's a way that we could reinforce that you're really arriving at a very specific destination by using some, some existing striping, a little bit more of the curb extensions, maybe something fun, but obviously well away from the railroad. We do not want to do anything there. Next slide, please. Again, some similar treatments that you're going to see. One of the things that we found very effective is to use project signs that we could explain some of these kind of treatment options, like, hey, what is a Sharrow or what is a bike lane? That could just help reinforce a little bit of the education and awareness and let people know, like, there is something going on here. It's part of this other project. We can use some colorful crosswalks near our schools and community spaces to draw a little bit more awareness and attention to where you're really going to see pedestrian type traffic. And again, depending on the width of the roadway, which we would be getting from obviously our friends at DPW, the width of the roadway will really dictate what type of treatments we can do. So maybe you could do a bike lane, maybe you could do a buffered bike lane if there's enough existing right-of-way space, and depending on what the on-street parking is available along any of these corridors. Just gives a little prioritization to, where the pedestrians are going to be and where bicyclists and motorists can actually expect these sort of interactions to occur. Next slide, please. Again, so a couple similar concepts here, maybe using a shared lane marking or a Sharrow. We can see that there's some potential for connectivity within, the interior of Ypsilanti. Again, these gateway treatments, just to let people know if they're entering into a more neighborhood residential setting. And again, some intersection curb extensions, just to make that crossing a little shorter and feel just a little bit safer for pedestrians. Next slide, please. So some of our next steps that we would be doing in partnership with the city and with Bonnie and Ron would be some data collection. We'd want to get the data that's already been collected from the city staff. We'd want to make sure that we have the roadway widths. Like I said, that will be key to presenting different design concepts. If a road is very, very narrow, that can really limit what we'd want to present to the public. We don't want to say, hey, we can promise you on-street parking on both sides and bike lanes and all of this when it's only a 20-inch roadway. There are limitations. And so we have to take all of those in context with one another. We'd also be working on developing a project signs, logo, and a project name. That way people could easily, know what this project is, how we would be marketing that, making sure that we're communicating, again, with the public. Adjacent property owners will be very important. We would cultivate that list with city staff and make sure that we're not missing any one key that we need to connect with early on in the project process. Again, project website, we'd be developing survey materials and develop a number of pre-project public input meetings. That is a lot of P's right there. And again, all of this would be done in partnership with city staff and in, we're a publicly funded organization. Everything we do is for the public, and additional project element considerations. We'd want to talk about wayfinding signs, sidewalk treatments, maybe bike parking. And then, the public always has great ideas. We always want to encourage and make sure that we bring all of those ideas to the table and see what things fit and maybe what kind of trade-offs would have to happen with one project element versus another. Next slide, please. Look at that. And that's all I have. I would be happy to answer any questions or provide any, I can always provide resources back to members of council if I don't have that information tonight, just to make sure that I address any comments or concerns.
Okay, Councilmember Simmons, I see your hand. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I wanted to say thank you so much. I'm really excited about the potential for some of these options. This is one of the things I was hoping for with the goal I had submitted this year for us to look at some traffic calming in different creative ways that are not necessarily going to break the bank. So I think it's fabulous. I don't really have a comment. I mean, just to say thank you so much, and I'm excited.
Other questions or comments? I want to thank Ms. Flowers and Bonnie and Mr. Akers. This is something that we have been, I think all of us on council at one time or another has talked about, the fact that we needed some traffic calming. And I travel 2nd Avenue quite often. And believe me, I've seen and I hear even the speed of traffic, even south of Monroe. So I am really happy, and hopefully if we calm traffic north of Monroe, that it will carry over as people continue south. So thank you. Any other? Yes, Mr. Morgan.
I'm interested in knowing what this, when you say short-term improvement, what's a good length of time when we're determining for short-term improvement?
I will turn that over to Bonnie.
I think that's
5 years,
actually
7 years.
less than a year, and likely everything would be done and perhaps back up before snow season this year. So it's ultimately going to depend upon the treatment and the types of paint we use if we do end up painting the pavement. But it would be a trial effectively.
Okay. And all of those places that were identified as needing traffic calming measures, we will have something at each of those identified locations pending the size of the street and what we're what can be considered, correct?
Correct.
And the last question, there must be some similarities in the build and layout of Chelsea to show this urbanism project in correlation to how Ypsilanti's laid out.
I would say that there are some definite similarities. I think actually Ypsilanti is a little bit further ahead in some of your mid-block crossings and intersection treatments. Chelsea is really growing out and around. And so there's a lot of things that are coming into the city that the city is actually being forced to deal with because of really township-led development. And so there's a lot of, I think the Border to Border Trail is a very good example of that. The Border to Border Trail follows Dexter Chelsea Road, which is an east-west road, and it intersects at the city and it stops. And so there's no wayfinding, there's no good place for people to cross the street. So the city put in some sidewalk extensions. And so I think that as our community collectively with around the county grows to include a lot more pedestrian and bicycle friendly infrastructure, these sort of projects are becoming more recognizable as a low cost treatment option to try out before any major structural changes are made with reconstruction or major rehabilitation work.
I appreciate you guys keeping it affordable and keeping it creative. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilcoxon.
I think these are great in terms of low cost options, and I really like the treatment of the intersections. You know, I was asking questions about traffic tables and things like that in certain intersections to slow things down. But I think the visual, and that's a lot of construction and it's a lot of cost. I think the visual treatments of intersections, you know, draws the person's attention to the fact that there's something there without giving them a bump to run into. So I like that. You know, I look at those pictures of the bollards and I just laughed out loud when I saw them, because we had them on Cross Street and people in Ypsilanti took it as target practice and ran them over. They lasted 24 hours. And so, you know, I think maybe we'll have to shift that, but you know, to something else, or making them steel and concrete so that if they hit them, well, you know, there's a greater consequence. But I just I think we'll have to be creative in a different route with those kind of things. But thank you very much for the presentation. I look forward to seeing some of these things happen. So
You're welcome. And I'll just say anecdotally, I live in Scioto Township, which is just outside of Dexter. And every summer, the city of Dexter puts those kind of square gateway treatments out. And it is amazing how slow people get when they approach those. And it's very similar in the city of Ann Arbor. So I mean, I've experienced those as a pedestrian and as a cyclist and as a driver. I do the same thing because it is that visual narrowing. And that's, you know, when you go, I think 2nd Street is such a good example that the base or the mouth of that street is so wide, it looks like it is encouraging you to go quick, much quicker than what the context of the roadway we really want. So like you said, with some striping, some paint, some low cost treatments, I think that we can demonstrate some real value add for the residents along these corridors.
And Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I think this is great. It's nice that there'll be something tangible and impermanent that we can sort of test run and then see what works and maybe do something that is more permanent. But I think residents will be glad to see something happening on this, and that's residents like all over town. So I think this is great. So it sounds like we have all of the tools that we need to be able to test or to determine efficacy after this is done, which I'm guessing are just the speed sensors and the speed signs.
Yeah, when I spoke with Bonnie and Ron, they said that you guys have quite a grouping of those that we can use kind of pre-project and post-project. And we would also use pre and post-project survey results with the residents. So we'd really want to hear what the residents liked, what they didn't like, what we could improve upon as well. That way, that's just good feedback long-term for the city as you all are developing programs that are similar to this. You know, what may work in one context may not work somewhere else.
Okay. And I will say, Steve, there are collapsible bollards that are the same diameter as the concrete ones. But they do collapse if you hit them. So that might be cool. But thanks again. This is nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Akers, did you have something for us?
No, Mayor, I was just gonna talk about the radar signs that we have. So the radar signs that we put up in the neighborhoods do have the ability to track speed, and they produce reports based on traffic volume and speed and all that. So really looking forward to be able to implement this project and measure the effectiveness of some of the strategies that are put forward.
Thank you. Okay. Questions, comments? Seeing none, would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
absolutely, yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville, still gone. Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
with 6 yes and 1 absent, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers, and thank you, Ms. Wessler and Mr. Akers. Very nice presentation. Thank you for all the work that you did on that.
Council, moving on to the next agenda item resolution number 2021-033, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the state of Michigan adopted the Small Wireless Communication Facilities Deployment Act in late 2018, which requires municipalities to allow small cell wireless facilities within public right of way. And whereas the city of Ypsilanti adopted an ordinance to regulate small cell wireless facilities with the constraints of this law. And whereas Verizon Wireless has submitted an application, and whereas city staff has reviewed the plans and application and has found that the plans are consistent with the requirements of city ordinances, now therefore be it resolved that the city of Ypsilanti approves small cell wireless application 2021-001, subject to review by the city attorney.
So
Is there a
moved.
motion? Support? Do we have support? All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? I do have one. When it said location, it was 1.101 Elm. Can somebody help me understand where that is?
I apologize if there was a typo in the application.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
address is 101 Elm that they're proposing.
The address is 101 Elm.
Yes, there's a
Okay.
utility pole in front of that address. They want to be able to locate a small cell antenna on.
All right.
I just have one small question.
Yes.
I just want to know, Mr. Akers, in the next 5 years, how many of these cell towers will we have in the city of Ypsilanti?
It's hard to determine. I can tell
How many
you.
do we have now?
There hasn't been any installed as of yet that I'm aware of. We've approved almost 30 locations thus far. So I think this will be either 29 or 31. It's somewhere in there. This is only from one carrier. So this is only Verizon Wireless who we've approved the locations from. I mean, in theory, we could see many more.
There's no max in the 4.3 mile radius. How many of these things can exist?
Not that I'm aware of. Under the state guidelines, they are allowed to put them in the city right away. We do have limitations as far as siting new poles. So when they site a new utility pole to put these small cells on, they have to maintain certain distances from other utilities. And as part of the application process, they also have to justify when they do site a new pole, why they couldn't site it on a pole within 300 feet of the location that they're proposing. What the applicants have done on some of their applications, they've considered it, is they give the rationale that DTE has provided them as to why they can't. And it's various reasons. It has to do with transmission lines and a lot of their existing infrastructure. But yeah, we could see a lot more of them.
The last question was a double question. How many right-of-ways are in the city of Ypsilanti, and how many of these cell towers can go on each right-of-way?
When we talk about right-of-ways, so any city, any
like a four-way stop, is that a right-of-way?
Well, so the term right-of-way refers to the easement that the road sits on. So, the widths vary depending on the size of the road. Generally a good rule of thumb in looking for right-of-way is you look at the actual width of the road and then the grass areas between the edges of the sidewalk. So that's all city-owned right-of-way. So any local roads, any major roads that are owned by the city, in theory, they could go there. So one of the places that you could look, I guess, just to visualize it, is anywhere in the city adjacent to a road where you see those wooden utility poles where you have DTE wires on. In theory, as long as they meet the guidelines of our ordinance, the guidelines of the state, they can go on those poles. Now they do have to meet. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is it 1 unit per pole?
As far as I know, yes. I don't know how they'd be able to put multiple antenna on the pole. There are provisions in our ordinance which talk about if they do site a new pole, having to make it available for multiple antenna on it. And
I heard something squeaking. Can somebody mute that? I just hear something squeaking.
Sorry, that's my dog.
Oh,
So,
that's you. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no problem. So with the but anyway, they asked that they make the tower so that way you could look at siting additional antenna on the tower if it's necessary. part of the reason for that is they don't want to sink a bunch of additional utility poles within city right away, because A, they don't want to interfere with existing utilities that are in there. But B, you know, generally the less obstructions you have in the right of way, the better. You know, we already have, you know, issues where people crash into light poles and other things and cause damage that way. So we try to avoid new installations when possible.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I have one. Is the city paid anything by Verizon for permission to put these on the poles?
Yes, so for existing poles, Verizon pays an application fee of $200, and that's set forth by state statute. When they put in new poles, the fee is $300. And then again, this is also by state statute. We can charge them, I think, up to $20 per year per location after they've been installed. So we have an inventory of the locations, and we're going to be coordinating with our Verizon reps to make sure that we are invoicing them every year for what goes up.
All right, thank you. Okay, seeing no other hand. Oh, Mr. Morgan. You're muted.
Mr. Akers, could you clarify for me easily, what does it mean for a bond of $1,000 per site is required at the time of permitting?
I would have to look at that specific area in the ordinance, but normally when we ask for a bond, there's a couple different ways they could do a bond. It could be a performance bond where they get a letter of surety from an agent where they basically guarantee that for them, or they could provide a cash bond that we hold until they perform some task. So I'd have to look at the ordinance again to see what is you're specifically.
So if it's 1,000 per site and we've already identified 31 sites, is that $31,000?
It may be. It depends. It depends on the specific language of the ordinance. I'd have to take a look at it. If it does require a cash bond, then we would have to hold. You know, technically, we'd hold $30,000 in escrow until they completed whatever task they were supposed to complete per the guidelines of the ordinance. Otherwise, they have an agent give them a surety guarantee, and you know that it's almost like insurance covering them doing the work. So it's really intended more of a performance guarantee than anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, seeing no hands, Mr. Halinga, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Council, moving on to the next item, resolution number 2021-034, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti recognized that racism is a public health crisis affecting our entire country in June 2020, and whereas the city established an Arts Commission in 2020 to promote art in the City of Ypsilanti and promote the city policy of pride, diversity, and heritage, to educate the public why the arts, culture, and creative industries are important to the City of Ypsilanti, and to cultivate a community culture and environment that embraces and nurtures artistic and creative assets, to promote and further diversity, equity, and inclusion of all Ypsilanti in the arts. Whereas local residents have presented a plan to paint a mural on Washington Street. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approve proceeding with Trisha Duckworth and Trevor Stone to paint a Black Lives Matter mural on Washington Street and have the project overseen by the Department of Public Services.
I'll move.
It's been moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Okay, do we have a presentation on this? Okay, yes, Mr. Myers.
Good morning, council. On the line, we have, good evening, sorry. We have Jennifer Goulet, who is the chair of our Arts Commission, as well as Trisha Duckworth and Trevor Stone, who are the ones proposing the mural. There is a short presentation. I don't know if they would like to give it. I don't know if you'd like to see it about this, but the Arts Commission has gone over this a couple times and really honed in on what they're looking to do. And staff thinks it's a good project. So I don't know if you have any direct questions for the applicant.
Okay. Did the applicants have a something that they wanted to show us? Did they want to show us what they are planning to do?
Trisha and Trevor, I do have the presentation that you presented to the Arts Commission. I don't know if you'd like me to share my screen and you guys can give that presentation.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, I will do that. But you guys can both turn on your cameras if you choose, and you can also and you should also be able to speak. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I hope this works. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. So Trisha and Trevor, just tell me when to progress, and I will progress my slides.
Okay, thank you so much. And we want to say hello to everyone here on City Council. We are honored to be before you tonight. Putting it simply, we are thrilled to come to you with this proposition to actually place a mural on South Washington. And because of North Washington being occupied, it was stated that maybe we could do one in Depot Town on Cross Street as well. The intention behind this is to serve a reminder to the community that we still have work to do in valuing Black lives and building racial equity within our communities. We will have about 20 to 30 artists that we'll be looking for this project. Also, and I'll let Trevor speak to this, as far as the stencils and things that would be needed for the project as well. You can proceed. Next slide, please. There has been murals, across the country. Next slide, please. And these are just presentations of different murals that have gone up in cities across the country. Now, our first proposal was to do the north and south side of Washington. And again, because of the programming or the festival type blockage of the street during the summer, we are also proposing to do South Washington and to do Depot Town, the Depot Town area. Next slide. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Now there was, and I'll just give it to Trevor here. Trevor has worked very hard to figure out some logistics around this project and what we would actually need to make it happen.
Trevor, you're muted.
All right. Are we there? Are we live? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, folks, thanks for having us out. So Trisha summed that up beautifully. And basically, I've been doing some research on, how other organizations have made this happen in their town, and just heard about, the process. So we've written up the process. If approved, then we can send you a detail of this. But we, from start to finish, from the kind of paint to use, to the stencils, to the kind of weather we need, to the timeline, we have all this figured out. And we also have the cost of it, which, I know that the city's not paying for it, so that's not a direct, relation to what you're doing, but we know our targets and what we have to hit to make one and then two murals happen. Ypsilanti has a lot of amazing different kinds of identities all in it. And we would like this chance to try to promote the well-being and the future welfare of Black lives as we move forward with some gentrified areas, you know, and to try to bring that balance. And I think that these places would be great. Not just the mural is step one, right? But once the mural is there, there's a lot of great opportunities to hold festivals and you know, even poetry readings, or get the high schools involved in different programs and the middle schools. There's just a lot of social programming that can stem from these that would bring a lot of life and love to the city. What questions do you have for us?
Okay, council, or before we go to council, Ms. Goulet, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I just am absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to be representing the Arts Commission's just solid enthusiasm for supporting this mural, and particularly given the fact that we're a brand new commission and we're still working on priorities and plans and goals and process, and that we have the honor to be entertaining a Black Lives mural in the heart of our community, to really visibly stand right for what's important in terms of you know, the rich diversity and inclusion of our community is gives me chills. So I'm just here today to lend support and share our enthusiastic support from the Arts Commission. We did have some additional conversation with Trichet and Trevor and the staff related to the Washington Street challenge on the North Block. And we're very supportive of the opportunity for there to be an additional mural conversation with the city. But kind of at this point, I think letting the staff work its magic with the city council in terms of the logistics of making this happen. But we're going to be pretty excited to be promoting it in the community. So
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would like to say thank you to Trichet and to Trevor. And certainly last year in June, and it carried over, the thought never left my mind, although I wanted to see the mural on Michigan Ave between Adams and Washington. And I kept going over and over in my mind the logistics of actually getting the state to let us shut down Michigan Ave to do the painting. But I want to say thank you to you two and Ms. Goulet for the work that you have done on this. Now, council, anyone have any comments or questions? Mr. Jones-Chance, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think this is great. I do wonder though, is there any reason we couldn't have two murals on Washington? Because I mean, I get the street closure, but it almost seems to me like it would last longer in a place that didn't have vehicle traffic on it. So I'm just curious, you know, why not North and South Washington? That's kind of my only question, but and I think even another one in Depot Town would be very appropriate as well. I don't see why not.
Mr. Myers, last year, South Washington was also closed for the summer. Will it be closed again?
We hope, although with North Washington, and Christopher might be the best person, but with North Washington, there will definitely be tents covering it.
Right.
But I do think a mural is a mural, and you really wouldn't be able to see the North Washington even if there wasn't any tents from overhead, just because of the tree coverage on that street. But I mean, it's the artist's will, I guess, and we can request they do more. But a portion of South Washington will be closed, hopefully. Now that does require two businesses want to be on the street. I think they will and hope they will. but the plan is to have both streets closed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, I have a comment. I know, well, first, I think this is a very artistic project. So forget, I believe in pushing the envelope and pushing the agendas forward. I do believe Black lives are marketable, if nothing else, even if they matter or not. And I'm curious to know all across the country where they have these murals, how much that added to the inclusion, to the equity, and to the fairness of the landscape in which it's painted on. So I know having a name or having some identity around on the street would show some sort of solidarity for the movement, in which I'm all in favor of. I hope it leads to some dialogue and leads to more policy, and leads to things that actually that can make us less marketable and more valuable and equitable in real life. But I will support the artistic gesture and nature of this, because I do think, and the last slide that was shown about the defacing of it, because here in the city where Elijah McCoy has been defaced so many times, when it's something about an African-American or somebody Black that's pretty prominent or that's out in the open. So I am not concerned, but some small backlash of those silent, those in silent opposition. I think it will bring some of those folks out. But hey, again, like I started this with, I am all about moving and progressing forward. So I thank you for bringing this creative, this is a big thing. It's not a small thing. And I do think it's going to get the attention that it deserves, positive and negative. Thank
you. Any other questions or comments? I'm sorry, Councilwoman Somerville.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to thank everybody for taking, the time and energy to bring this to council, and for being here tonight. I'm happy to support this. I think it is very, fitting for what our community, how our community feels, and, how we want to be represented when people come into, our city.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilcoxon.
Thank you, Mayor. When I read this, I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's a very great idea. And I started thinking backwards in time. We voted to get rid of the Black Lives Matter flag in our council chambers. So I was like, how does this fit into that decision? And at that time, it was like, well, we don't want to make any statements to that. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. It's like, people said they didn't want to make those kind of statements, but now we hear people saying, we do want to make this out on the street in big ways. And I'm just, curious about how people's minds have changed, the taking down of the flags and then replacing it with a huge mural outside. It's like, so it seems to be some cognitive dissonance around that.
I will remind myself, and then part of that vote, that we were talking about what happened in city chambers and city hall chambers. And I think those were the deciding factors about what the municipal government would allow and disallow. Now, out on the street, being a community involvement piece, I'm not so certain. I still stand by everything I said about the good and bad that comes with the mural. But I think if we painted Black Lives Matter on the floor of the council, it'd be, again, I think it'd go against what I voted for. I wouldn't vote for it to be in the council chambers on the floor.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yeah, I would agree. I consider this to be artistic expression out in the community that was brought to us by, members of the community, which I think is different than flags flying within the chamber. And also having the entire council chamber covered in a multitude of flags, which was a part of the conversation that we were having. But I'm very excited about this. I think this is super cool. And I look forward to seeing how it turns out.
Any other comments?
I think the presenters have their hands raised.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see them. Trisha or Trevor, did you have your hand up.
Trevor, you can go. You had your hand first.
Okay, thank you kindly, Tricia. So I just want to say Anthony Morgan made some incredible points. And I think that the mural is a good first step. I think it is the programming that would come from that would take it past lip service and into moving towards equity. I know that, I've heard Black people in Ipsy say downtown's not for me, and there's nothing for us down there. And I know not everybody thinks that, but I've heard enough Black people say that I think that, having huge murals where we could launch festivals like Afrocentric festivals, and Black centered festivals, I think would be, and other program activities, I think would be maybe an anchor and a foothold into some communities feeling like they could start to move back into downtown. I also want to say, I think there is going to be people who graffiti that, and I think we should plan on repainting that. And if we do it 3 times and we repaint it 3 times, you know what I mean? Maybe then they just stop and they just know that we're going to repaint it every time they do that. So we plan for that in the material costs. I also want to say that as far as the location, the drying time is like 4 hours for this paint on a hot summer day. So, I know that all these restaurants and everywhere, but like on Washington in Ipsy are struggling to make their, to make cash right now. But it would be like 1 day of pause, and we could be there at 5 a.m, knock this out and this thing would be done. You know what I mean? After 1 day, and then the town would get the benefits of that. So I think that's all I wanted to say, and I would love to talk with, Anthony Morgan and, tons of other Black people in the community and leaders and organizations and groups, that serve all ages and all identities within Black, to see how this could be actually leveraged to make a more equitable city. I think it's a great starting point, but Anthony Morgan is absolutely correct that we need to watch that 1,000%. Thank you for your time, Tricia.
You said everything that needed to be said, so I will yield my time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, I just want to say thank you again to Tricia and Trevor for just, reaching in my mind and pulling it out and making it happen. I appreciate it. So thank you. Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, and thank you, Ms. Golay. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you again to all those that brought this forth and those that are working with you behind the scenes. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing it on the street. Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mrs. Golay, as well, for just taking the ideal and just bringing it into manifestation. We truly appreciate the Arts Commission.
Yes. Thank you all.
To the entire council. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Tricia. Good to see you.
Appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you, guys. We appreciate you, Trevor. We appreciate you, Tricia. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask one quick question? Because I don't know exactly how the situations work. Now, we've asked, different city people, and they said, yes, go ask the next group up. You know what I mean? Is this the last group? Like, is this about to happen now? Or is there more people to ask?
No, this is
That's awesome.
This is this is the top. You don't have to go any further.
Okay.
Okay. Council has spoken.
Thank you.
The council spoke unanimously, so go for it.
You made it.
Okay.
Yes.
Trevor, as part of the motion, you do have to work with Ron Akers, our DPS director, and I will get you his contact just to make sure things go properly with the street. But yes, no more approvals needed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right, thank you. Okay, Clerk Kalinga.
The next resolution is resolution number 2021-035. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the city is undertaking a 5-year update of the master plan, and whereas housing affordability and accessibility is important to the values of the City of Ypsilanti. And now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council approves requesting the Planning Commission reinsert recommendations relating to family occupancy cap limits, visibility requirements, and corner lot duplexes into the master plan relating to housing affordability and accessibility.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Ooh,
No support.
ooh,
I don't care which one.
It's been moved and supported. And before we start discussion on this resolution, may we have an a motion to extend the meeting? It is now 9:41, and
Shucks.
we will have discussion on this and the rest of the agenda to go through. So
I'll move to extend to 10:15.
Support.
You know, we
Okay,
need longer than that.
Womp womp.
it's been moved and supported. I see some council members shaking their head, but
Oh, no, I was just saying, Anthony said we need longer than that. I said,
oh, okay.
It's gonna go longer
Keep
than
it-
that. I'm sure it is. But
keep it-
Well, everybody
Everybody-
just has to talk faster. There were a couple of things that took a lot longer than I thought would take. I just, thought we'd zip through them, but okay, it's been moved and second that we extend the meeting to 10:15. All in favor?
Aye.
Ish.
Um,
All right, the motion. Now we will begin discussion
Is that a
on
yish
the
or a
resolution.
yish?
I think we have a quick, maybe a little presentation, something like that.
do we?
Yes,
Yeah, I can.
Do
say
you?
a few things.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna make a comment, but you can take the lead, Brian.
Oh. All right, well, so the past few weeks, Annie and I have been meeting with Joe to go over some of the items that were removed from chapter 7. And the ones that have been reinserted so far are ones that have been previously vetted by staff and are lawful. So we are requesting that these 3 items be added back to chapter 7.
Councilmember Somerville.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so as Brian mentioned, we had been meeting with Joe to kind of work through some of this. And I'm happy with the results that is presented in our council packet to ask the Planning Commission to include back into the master plan update. I hope everybody else is, satisfied as well. I think they're pretty straightforward. And yeah, I'm obviously in support of this because I helped get it on the agenda. But there's not a whole lot else other than what was included in our packet to add, so.
Okay, questions or comments? Put your
Yeah.
hand up, Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, I'll also add that there are other items that will be, we plan to go through. But these are ones that were concurrently being worked on and vetted by staff. And so we know that these are appropriate to the master plan.
Thank you. It's your hand up, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge publicly that I'm glad we had an opportunity to revisit it. I don't believe that I gave it its due diligence. I do want to, again, for those, I want to acknowledge those who did do a lot of work and was committed to this process. And I know a lot of people didn't like the first outcome, and I just want to say these are recommendations. They're nothing more. They're suggestions. And sometimes people won't be excited about the decision. So I just thought some of the responses to our decision, even though again personally I could have took more vetted interest in it, but I think just how it was responded to I didn't appreciate. But I'm glad we got it right and got things back that were necessary components that were legal. So I just want to state that for the record.
Thank you. Any further discussion, comments? Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, I'll just throw in another thing, just so that it's clear like what's happening. So yeah, the item, just the fact that the items are in the master plan doesn't mean that these become policy. So I do hope that we can take all of these items from chapter 7 in turn and discuss them and actually turn them into policy. But also some other items that were, for example, that were in the report, but haven't really been vetted in any way, and also work through those so that we can decide whether or not they should be, become part of our housing policy with community involvement, respecting the diversity, especially of our renting population, and the folks that need more accessibility. So this is far from the end of this process, but it is a good first step, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Clerk Kalanga, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons, Councilmember Simmons, Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes, sorry, I had to step away for a second.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Wow, that went fast. Okay, the next item, please.
The next
You thought
item
that
on-
was going to be controversial, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, the thing is that the ones I thought that would go really quickly, they took up a good little bit of time. So, yes, Mr. Alinga, please continue.
Council, the next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding traffic calming recommendation for 2nd Street and Garland and Vinewood.
Okay, and who's gonna present on that?
That would be Project Manager Bonnie Wessler.
Okay. All right, Ms. Wessler, you're on. Ms. Wessler, did you
didn't hear
step
my
away
call.
for a moment?
Yeah,
There
sorry,
she
I'm not feeling particularly well tonight, so it's taking me a moment longer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hope you feel better.
Thank you very much. Yes, so tonight we'll be starting with 2nd Avenue. We did receive a petition from many of the residents along 2nd Avenue regarding their some speeding issues that they had observed in that area. We did take a number of speed and traffic studies in the area to see if there was actually a speeding issue reflected in the data or whether it was perception. Oftentimes, as we stand on the sidewalk, if a car goes by, it seems to be going much faster than it was. However, the data that we received did show that there was a significant speeding issue in the area of 2nd between Michigan and Monroe. The 85th percentile speed and the 95th percentile speeds were quite high, as well as the average speed. We did often see high speeds peaking out at about between 70 and 75, which was pretty impressive. We also saw that there was not really a pattern to those high speeds. So there's high speeds at random parts of the day. It wasn't just sort of a rush hour. We did also see a number of crashes in the affected area. So 35 crashes between 2010 and 2019. So over the last 10 years. There are schools rather nearby, but more impactful. We do have bottles and backpacks right there on the corner of Second and Michigan Avenue. So the Traffic Review Committee, after much discussion, we are recommending that we continue to work with Watts over the summer and see if there are any wonderful solutions that they can bring to us.
Any questions for Ms. Wessler? Comments?
Well, I have one comment regarding the Garland memo. And if that's correct, it said it's an average of 250 vehicles per day, which adds up to, I think, 91,250 per year times 9 years. So there hasn't been one crash in 900,000 cars in 9 years. No deaths. So I think between this one and the second memo with 35 crashes, that's more of a priority than this one, correct?
Second Street does indeed have a lot more of an issue than Garland does.
Those are reported ones. There have been,
Correct.
That's if people report what's happening.
Okay, so
Right,
there
and-
has been no reported crashes in 2010 to 2019 in Garland. And I'm not saying that we need pedestrian deaths or crashes to be the criteria. So speeding alone is the number one issue in this area, correct?
Correct. We also saw much lower speeds overall in the Garland and Vinewood area. But as council member, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just asking, are they asking for the same things based on those two different research patterns? Are they asking for the same amount of, are they asking for the same recommendations for traffic calming with those two stark different outcomes or realities in those areas?
So in general, both petitions asked for us to do something, but I don't believe that either particularly asked for a specific solution.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie.
Okay.
Hope you feel better.
Council Member Somerville.
I'll save my question if we're gonna if you're gonna explain more about the Garland stuff after this. Is that what's gonna happen? I don't want to start asking questions about that in the middle of, okay, I'll wait.
Yep. I wanted to take questions on second first and have a discussion on second first, and then Garland, if that's amenable to council and the mayor.
Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, I've been curious about what the reports pulled. Some of these were from over the summer, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with you that 75 miles an hour on Second, which, once you get onto the street seems pretty narrow with the cars parked. That's really something. So I'm, as excited as I am about the project with Watts, I wonder if there's not something more immediate that you think maybe we should be doing, or maybe, the winter it's kind of subsided and we can wait. I'm just concerned someone's gonna get hurt or worse.
Generally speaking, we wouldn't be doing anything until the snow season is over. So that is in April at the absolute earliest. And as I alluded to in the Watts presentation, Second Street, as well as many other streets within the city, are not good locations for speed humps, which has been sort of our go-to in the last few years. And one of the reasons we actually brought Watts in is because a lot of these are kind of head scratchers. Like the roadway is fairly narrow. There aren't a lot of crosswalks in this area that we can use to sort of tighten things down. It's a tough place to do work.
Yes, Second's really kind of a straightaway. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
I actually had to raise my hand to say something similar. I'm like, I actually don't know what ideas for this could be. I was going to ask Bonnie, but then you called it a head scratcher. So I don't know. Because 75 on, that is mind blowing actually, that folks are driving that fast. I knew they were driving fast, not that fast. yeah, so I'm sorry, my question is kind of no.
It's okay. All questions are good. Is your hand up, Mr. Wilcoxon?
It is indeed.
Okay.
Thank you. In the cycling world, we call it traffic furniture. And it's things that if you're moving through there that in terms of racing bikes, you're things that you could crash into, but they serve functions. So islands at intersections, things like that, roundabouts are a big deal. And it's like, you know, there's long stretches there without any intersections and things like that, but then making other traffic furniture, chicanes and things like that, the things that people have to think about getting through that don't pose a problem to, you know, fire and police and things like that, but absolutely makes a vehicle slow down. If you have to slow down and get through a section that is somewhat curved in a single lane going through there, then you can't do 70 miles an hour unless they're like speeding from each traffic, you know, furniture to furniture. But I think, you know, 70 miles an hour there and 70 miles an hour in other places in the city is just absolutely ridiculous. These long straightaways, you know, lend themselves to that. And I think, you know, thinking about obstacles is a reasonable way to go.
Excuse me, could everyone mute themselves, please? Thank you. All right. Okay, were you done, Mr. Wilcoxon? You were, okay. All right, any other questions or comments on Second Avenue? Okay, it is just it's a straight shot once you turn that corner, and Miss Flowers was right, the intersection there, the entrance into Second is extremely wide. So I don't know if that makes it inviting to speed, or as she said, or not, but I do know that I've experienced people speeding down there. So, okay, Miss Wessler, if you want to take us on over to the next street, please.
Yep. So our next street tonight is Garland, and to a lesser extent also Vinewood, which is the cul-de-sac off of Garland. Garland connects Miles Street to Cross Street, and there's a 90-degree turn about halfway in there. The neighborhood did submit a petition to us, and we did do speed studies through September, October, and November. So we did 3 different periods of speed studies. So we did measure the 85th and 95th percentile speeds. All of those were, but the 85th percentile speed was definitely below the speed limit. So that is the point at which more than 85% of the traffic is going. That was explained terribly, but more than 85% of the traffic is going at 24.1 miles per hour or less. So the vast majority of the traffic is going below the speed limit, which is currently 25. The average speed limit speeds that were traveled were below 20 miles per hour. Miles also has a significant curve in it, which limits the amount of speed that people can build up. They do have to turn to the east if they're going southbound, or they do have to turn to the west if they're going southbound, or north if they are going eastbound on this. So that limits significantly. It's sort of its own natural chicane. There were no traffic crashes reported within this period of time. And so the Traffic Review Committee is recommending that the cross ramps and the crosswalks in this particular area be upgraded. But due to the low travel speeds being observed and the lack of crashes in the past 10 years, we are not recommending any additional interventions.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Somerville.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of like the process, I mean, obviously this neighborhood thought that there was a need because of some of the issues that they were experiencing over the summer. So I guess how does this get relayed to them? Although I see that some of the residents are on this call. I'm just curious, you know, there are lots of kids that live there, like other than striping and all of that. What can we do?
So 2020 was a year that was very odd for a number of reasons, but one of them was that we saw an increase in driver infractions and misbehavior, if you will. We saw a greater number of people speeding, and we also saw a lot more people out and about enjoying their neighborhood on foot or on bike. So that led to a definite increase in the amount of reported speeding, whether that was perceived speeding or whether that was actual speeding or whether it was someplace in between. That's difficult to tell because, you know, we haven't surveyed every single point in the city, but this is also a nationwide thing. So we understand that the neighbors there are indeed concerned about, you know, their neighbors and people speeding through the neighborhood. The speeding here was pretty predictable. The peak hour was generally between 3 and 5 p.m. and peaked out at about 35 miles per hour. So I suspect it's actually one of the neighbors or a couple of the neighbors who persistently use this as a cut through, or if not a direct neighbor, then somebody who lives in the neighborhood and is familiar with the area. So one of the things that could perhaps decrease the amount of speeding, in addition to enforcement, of course, as everybody's bandwidth and everything in the world as it is right now allows, is simply education and peer pressure. So a lot of people don't always realize that they're speeding. Some people don't realize the impact of speeding that has on people's ability to enjoy their neighborhood. They think, well, this is what I've always done. I've always gone through here at 30 miles per hour or 35 miles per hour. And it's me. I know where everything is. I know where all the driveways are. I'm never going to get into a crash. But the people you pass by on the street don't know that. It's the pedestrians and the kids, of course. So sometimes there aren't great solutions. And, you know, I think this is one of those where we don't have a great solution. It's education, it's peer pressure, it's occasional targeted enforcement.
I appreciate that. If I remember correctly, they were asking for speed humps.
Yes.
Okay. So like, even when this like comes to this conclusion, are there other avenues for that neighborhood to advocate and still request speed humps outside of this?
This is the policy that council chose to adopt.
So I guess, can council still, if we wish, move forward with requesting speed humps there?
Yes, the way the policy is written is that the neighborhoods are encouraged to petition. The traffic review committee reviews the data and makes a recommendation. They invite the residents and the petitioners to those council meetings. Council effectively makes the determination upon which route to go.
Okay, I thank you for clarifying that. And I see hands up in the attendees, and obviously we can't allow folks to speak at this time. I just wanted to like put that out there so folks knew that. But yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know where other members of council are at, but I do think that when a neighborhood group asks for something like speed humps, that we should seriously consider it. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, Bonnie, would you say the Garland example is more of a case of perceived speeding? Just based on what I'm wondering what the threshold is for how you make that determination.
It's possible. It's also possible that during the 3 time periods we were out there, that the speeders weren't. We cannot prove that something doesn't exist. All we can ever do is prove that it didn't exist when we're looking for it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, this was on for discussion. There was to be no vote, right?
Correct.
My understanding, okay. Yes. All right, well, I certainly appreciate you and Mr. Akers and the work that you did to get this information for us. And certainly we can continue to look at Garland and also second, and hopefully that we will come up with some things that we can use on both streets before Watts comes in. I know right now with the snow and ice, I don't think that there's going to be much speeding on Second during this time, but yet we still never know. So, okay. Thanks to both of you for the presentation, for the work that you did. Appreciate it. And do hope you feel better, Ms. Wessler.
Thank you.
Sure. All
Thanks,
right,
Connie.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Halenga.
Council, next item on the agenda is liaison reports, first being SEMCOG.
No report.
Next is Watts.
No report. We have a meeting tomorrow.
Next is Urban County.
No report.
Next is DDA.
Hey, good evening, council. We have a meeting on Thursday. Going to pass the budget and a few other small items. Encourage any of you to come.
Thank you.
Next item is Friends of Rutherford Pool.
They met earlier this month. Basically discussed the budget going forward in the new year. A couple different budgets scenarios were laid out in terms of opening. Clearly, opening at the usual time is problematic with the pandemic and vaccination. But they're still looking at trying to make that happen with reduced volume. Solar panels are going on the roof thanks to Dave Strinsky and AJ Leo. They got that figured out. This is not the full plan that they had originally had with creative financing, but what could be afforded, and then those can be expanded at a later point. And I think it's it. I think that's it for that. There's other things that I will take up with the city manager privately. So.
Okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion to extend the meeting. We are at 10:09.
I move to extend the meeting to 10:30.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded to extend the meeting to 10:30. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Continue, Mr. Halenga, please. Thank you.
Council, next item on the agenda is council proposed business.
Okay, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a few items. Well, first I want to talk about YPAC. I didn't attend the last meeting, but David Fair was a voice. It was a virtual meeting with David Fair, and it was a letter from Eli Savitt, the county commission. The county prosecutor. And the next meeting is February 25th. And I do want to reply to Commissioner Wolkoff's statement. I do support what she said about me being visible and vocal, which it adds, and me not being there takes away. Again, I'm still trying to find my foot of how to interact within the commissions. And so I appreciate that charge from her. I want to give a shout out to the two people from Ypsilanti that's on Governor Whitmer's team. I saw that via email. Seemed like Ypsilanti has some strong people out here looking to make the governor's team more beefy. I wanted to ask a question to the police chief, if I could. This is a question concerning with our reports that we get from the police department. It just says something, whatever, in a routine stop, something was smelled and a blood draw was done. And I was just interested in knowing about what a blood draw entails and what's the procedure from our local law enforcement. Chief, are you on the line?
I am, sir. So I'm sorry.
Question. According to what was written, it said there was an odor that something was smelled, and so a blood draw was done. So what constitutes or warrants a blood draw? And if alcohol is smelled, is the same thing done? So, and let me know what training is involved with that, please.
So there's several aspects to that. To start out with, there's standard field sobriety testing that is certified through the state that all the officers are trained in. And that is specific to driving, whether it's under the influence of alcohol or narcotics. And I'm not exactly sure specifically which incident you're talking about, but whether it's a smell of narcotics or smell of alcohol or what have you, there's field sobriety tests that would back that up. So it's not simply just the smell of something. There would be other testing that's done on scene, and then all of that would be submitted to the prosecutor's office for a search warrant, because blood draws are done under a search warrant, which would have to be approved by the prosecutor's office and signed by a judge. And then the person's conveyed to usually St. Joe's, where the blood draw is conducted.
Okay, so police officers are not conducting blood draws from the car?
No, absolutely not. That is required by law to be done at a medical facility.
Okay, cool. All right, I just wanted to make sure. Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I just want to say, I want to give a shout out. I guess we get the notifications. I guess with it's two I have an issue with, and one I don't. It has no effect. I guess I can't. The Senate bill, it made Juneteenth an official state holiday. That's pretty cool. I guess in the Senate bill to ban the Confederate flags on the state capitol. I guess that's important. But the one, the House Bill 4068 that imposes liabilities for government agencies that maintain weapon-free zones. Now, I know it's a mouthful, and I'm gonna have to dig into that to find out what that really entails. But it doesn't sound like it's in support of, or I guess impose liability for weapon-free zones. I don't know how that would affect us with what's going on in our city right now with the ordinance we're looking to get some assistance from the state on. And more about, yes.
Mr. Barr is still here with us if you want to ask him to enlarge upon that.
I don't know if I've done my due diligence and research, but Mr. Barr, are you familiar with House Bill 4068 that was introduced about imposing liabilities to government agencies that maintain weapon-free zones?
I haven't seen that bill, although I know that Senator Irwin introduced a bill allowing cities to regulate firearms in city property, but I haven't seen the other one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That bill hasn't been introduced yet, by the way.
Okay. Well, it's coming. All right. Cool. Thank you. And the last thing I want to ask is, I guess to economic developer, not economic, Mr. Myers. Question: when there's a zoning violation, and the zoning violation is deemed open, what does that mean?
A little more context would help.
Okay. I was sent some documents from Mr. Yap, and I looked on some of them. On the document, it showed on SeeClickFix where there were some violations, and it says opening, and it describes some of the violations, but it just says open. It didn't say closed. I don't know if a violation is open versus a violation being closed. What does it mean?
So on SeeClickFix, it's a citizen-led portal where you can open tickets for zoning violations. One of the quirks with C-Click Fix is when an issue is open, when we close it, when we're done, anyone, including the person who opened the ticket, can reopen the ticket, regardless of if it's been taken care of or not. So the issues have been taken care of in that alley on C-Click Fix. But usually the owner of that ticket will reopen it, saying that they were not satisfied with the way we took care of it.
So the person who don't like the determination can reopen it for another determination, or just to say this, show that it's not closed to their liking?
More saying that it's not closed to their liking, because they would like a different opinion.
Okay.
There's no legal recourse on C-Click Fix. It's more to let us know.
Okay.
And the issues back there are long standing, as you all know. And so.
Okay. So there is a such thing as legally open and legally closed. So when the decision is made and the end of the matter, regardless of the person liking the outcome or not, is considered closed.
Yes. But C-Click Fix isn't a legal mechanism.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I believe that concludes my business today, Mayor. Thank you so much. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Simmons.
Awesome. Really important stuff from earlier in this meeting. This is the Huron Hotel. Is Bonnie still there? Just wanted to mention Joe, Huron Hotel behind me, if that helps you all. And I wanted to bring back the issue regarding the, sorry, I seem to have closed my agenda. With the parks. Clerk Kalunga, you said I could bring that back?
Yes. You would have to motion to reconsider.
Okay, I make a motion to reconsider the parks ordinance.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved in second to reconsider the parks motion on the vote on the ordinance for the parks. Do you want to go on with that, Councilmember Simmons?
Oh, I'm not sure that there's any convincing about others, but actually, my intent, I was in error in voting no, so I would like to change my vote, and I had the option, so that's what I was recalling that. I think it makes sense to add this in. We have, the setup for streets and whatnot, and so adding in parks to me just makes sense. And I think having some type of mechanism is better, and we can choose to improve it, but if it's good enough for kind of our streets and other aspects, I think this just makes sense to do. So that's all. I mean, I'm happy to call the question. I mean, I didn't really want to belabor it anymore, other than.
So there'll need to be a vote on to reconsidering, and then there can be debate and then a vote again on the resolution.
Okay.
It's been moved and properly second to reconsider the vote on the ordinance for setting a process for naming parks. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Somerville?
This is on the motion to reconsider.
Correct.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
You're muted.
No.
Councilmember Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen?
Yes.
Mayor Richardson?
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes and 1 no.
All right, thank you. The motion passes. So is there any discussion or comments? Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
No, I just wanted to say, I support Councilmember Simmons wanting to change her vote, which is why I supported reconsidering. I'm still going to be voting no on this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? It's your hand up, Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that we are just voting on whether or not we should have a process for doing this. Unless we're going to keep all of our parks with the same names forever and ever, it might be handy to have a mechanism.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wilcoxen?
Oh, no further comment.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Simmons.
Oh, I just want to say, and I'm not voting on this because I'm angling to change any names on, any parks. It's more because I want to support a process for it, so.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
No.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones-Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
No.
Councilmember Somerville.
No.
Motion carries 4 yes, 3 no.
All right, thank you. So the end result of the ordinance is that we will have a process for changing the names of parks. Okay, thank you.
There'll be a second reading, yes.
For a second reading, okay. Thank you. Okay, so what was the second vote that we took?
You voted to reconsider what was previously failed, and then you voted on the resolution.
Okay, so there has to be another reading of the resolution?
Yes.
Well,
it's
for
an
the second reading of the ordinance.
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, that, I was there, but when you said another one, okay, thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
I don't have much this evening. I just wanted to publicly thank all the community members and those that I saw, that I spoke to, that were out assisting and supporting folks with getting their snow taken care of today. I saw several efforts across the board, across the city, of people getting out there and helping their neighbors, including right here on my street. And so I just want to thank folks for, getting out there and helping and supporting everyone. But also, I guess in light of this last vote, I don't know how we would go about this, and I'll be brief. I can send an email, but I just want to put out there that I think for second reading, I would like to see a piece of this ordinance talk about a more specific process for when we're trying to name something after an individual person. I think more than 10 signatures or whatever should be necessary in moving forward with that, as well as I want to understand, again, I know that there are mechanisms in place in this ordinance that, there's a lot of pieces to go through, but I still don't understand if someone were to be able to jump through every hoop 30 days after doing it one time and then doing it again 30 days later, that could also change and come to council again, to change the name of a park. So I want to understand better, I guess, how we set parameters to prevent that kind of thing happening, or people can't petition us every 45 days for a new name of a park. Because I still don't see that anywhere in the ordinance. But I'll write an email that's more clear, because I'm trying to rush through this so that we get done at 10:30. So, Clerk Kalanga.
Well, we have 6 minutes to 10:30. We should probably just extend to 10:45 so we can get through the meeting.
Well, I'm done.
Yes. We still won't make it.
I believe in us.
Can we have a motion, please?
I'll move to extend to
the meeting?
10:45.
Support.
Thank you.
Slow rolling it. Just go to 11 and cut it.
No.
We don't have to do it if we can finish faster. But
Right. Oh, is there,
Costinus,
is there, it
It
was
was,
moved
yeah.
and seconded for 10:45. Do you want to withdraw your motion or?
No, let's do it. Let's get out of here.
20 minutes. We can do it.
We can do it.
Okay, okay.
I.
Aye.
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 Uh,
Aye.
all right.
And I'll
Okay.
keep the rest of mine in an email though, seriously, because I have to frame my thoughts a little bit better. So I will send an email out with my thoughts. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Somerville.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'm excited that on our next, I think it's our next agenda, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're gonna have a resolution regarding the Huron and Cross Slip Lane. I believe that's what I heard. And then also we'll have something regarding the Social Equity Fund, in terms of like how like an action for us to utilize it. I do want to update the city manager and Clerk Kalinga and Reagan that I still haven't gotten more details for you all. So I think that if I don't get those this week, we should just like, I guess, move forward with just like setting up the fund. But I'm working to make sure we have that information. I'm sorry that I haven't gotten it to you yet. And I wanted to bring up Corner Health Center submitted a grant application for the youth funding. So I just wanted to like bring that up to the top. I don't know if anyone else knew that.
I knew that.
Okay. I talked to one of the staff members. So I just wanted to just see if we could get the ball, if they submitted it to the right place. But I just wanted to, I could have sent an email on that. I'm just bringing it up here because I remembered. And then I just want to thank Ron Akers and Bonnie Wessler for sending me very thorough information regarding the Frog Island lights. And I will hopefully have time to get that information out on the social media world for people who have concerns. But overall, I'm hearing a lot of positive feedback about those lights. I haven't had a chance to see them in person yet, but I'm planning on it sometime soon. So thank you, and thanks to everyone at the DPS department for keeping our roads clear.
Very good. Yes. Is that it? Yes.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, well, I will just mention right now that, yes, the Corner Health, the director there, or I don't know if she's the director, but the person that submitted the grant application has spoken with me a couple of times about that. So, okay. Mr. Wilcoxon.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended a Sustainability Commission meeting. They're working on an annual report. Apparently, they have not submitted an annual report in the past, so it's a new process for them, and they're thinking about that. They're going through the goals set for the year with a particular goal per meeting, and the last one was focused on water. They're looking at ways to educate the public about PFAS. We have some in the Huron River. We have some signage up around the river that some of it comes from the county health, and there's more information available from the Watershed Council that can go up as well. So they're going to be working on that. They're also looking to have somebody from the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commission give a presentation from that, and then depending on how that goes, I may ask them to come to council to do that presentation as well. I also attended a non-motorized advisory committee meeting last night. They're putting together a non-motorized plan. The principal person involved in that is Mike Davis Jr., who is a resident, and he's been on a number of commissions for the city, but he's also a planner for MDOT, and brings a lot of information to bear on that. He and Bonnie were also involved in a presentation to the Bike Alliance of Washtenaw County, which is a group of folks from around the area that are looking at making the county a walkable, bikeable area. And so they presented on the I-94 crossing, the Huron and Hamilton traffic calming measures and those kinds of things, and it got good reception. There's a proposal to have a corridor between Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor on Packard. And when you look at the way Packard is structured right now through there, Ypsilanti has done a great job has really done a great job. The improvements on Packard near the schools, you know, going through the intersection at Mansfield, look great compared to every place else along through there. So you've got Pittsfield Township and Ypsilanti Township, and you've got Ann Arbor, and I think we've done a much better job. We've got a very small portion, but we did a really good job on that. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody that was involved with that. One of the things that came up in that as well was, you know, we got these improvements to the B2B trail, the border to border trail. People ask what the city was doing to provide access to people who use bicycles for transportation to use that in the winter. And I mentioned that we just bought a new equipment for smaller things, but I'll catch up with Ron about that. So that's all that's there. There's a lot of other things, but I'll call it quits for now. So.
All right, that's it. Thank you. Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, just quickly, I want to mention, so I'm sure you'll go into more detail about the Ward 1 Town Hall, about the COVID-19 vaccinations. So we'll be touching on efficacy and skepticism with Dr. Ovita Fuller. And we'll also be talking about availability and getting your hands on a vaccine or getting one into your arm or however you want to put that. But that's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all of council. Well, I'll just pick up on the town hall. It's this Saturday at 12 o'clock. And yes, our featured speaker will be Dr. Ovita Fuller, who is an experienced virology professor at U of M Med School. She's also, as I mentioned before, she is also a member of the FDA Advisory Council, the council that made the decision on approving vaccines for emergency use. We also, Chief Hobbs is going to be there to talk about his experience in getting the shot. And we have a couple of other people that we're waiting for final approval that they will be with us. On I think I made mention of this at the last meeting that we, Mr. Jones-Chance and I have been planning a Black History program, and that program will be on Friday, the 26th of February, and it's a city-wide program. And we'll be featuring Ypsilanti's history makers, and we will be looking at Blacks that have were first in the city, whether they were elected, just some not first, but elected, past elected officials, and also first department heads in the city. And for time's sake, I will cut it short there because we've got just a few minutes left. So that's at 11 o'clock on the 26th.
I thought it was 10:30.
No, 11 o'clock.
Okay, so that's what it was said at the Monday meeting.
No, I didn't give it. If I did, I spoke wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you waiting for me?
Yes.
I have two memos that are in the under communications. So that's pretty much my update for tonight. It's just an update on some projects that we're working on. If you got any questions regarding specifics or details, just email. But just kind of want to let you know what we're working on right now.
Oh, I did have one other thing, and I just Well, no, I won't have time to go into it because we're almost done. So that's fine. I'll send out an email.
There are a couple of communications on here. There is the 2020 Planning Commission Annual Report. If you want to go to the MML Capital Conference, please send me an email by the end of this week so I can get everyone registered. And then the mayor already went over the Black History Month program. So that's it for communications.
Andrew, is that capital registration, is that virtual?
Yes, that'll be virtual.
What are the dates on the conference?
Let me double check real quick. I think it's the
16th
March.
and 17th.
Yes, March 16th and 17th. Thank you.
I do have one other thing. Those, everyone should be receiving the MML review and the publication for January and February. It has a very nice extensive article on City Manager McMullen. And at the very back of the magazine, there is an article that yours truly wrote regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the work that the Michigan Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials is doing. So invite you to read those two articles.
I saw those. Those were really nice.
Thank you. They were very, very nice article about City Manager McMullen.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Nice picture with the governor, like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And
You're welcome.
There's nothing else.
That's it for me.
I move we adjourn.
That's support.
Or, I
What took you so long?